Chapter 2143. So it's Xiao Hua, Taoist Master Xiao. The fisherman kowtowed again. Taoist Master Xiao, we don't know how to repay your kindness to us. From now on, we'll definitely set up a longevity tablet for Taoist Master and pray that Taoist Master's fortune will last forever. Then thank you very much. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and sent the fisherman away. Only now did Xiao Hua turn to Bai Min and say, "Fellow Taoist Bai, is there anything else?" This. Bai Min smiled bitterly. What else could there be? Xiao Hua was definitely asking while knowing the answer. However, Bai Min wasn't a brainless person. He rolled his eyes and bowed. I'm here to thank Taoist Master Xiao for saving my life. If it weren't for Taoist Zhao's intervention, even if I could escape this calamity, I'm afraid none of the 57 disciples of my overseas Star Bright Island, Jiue Island, Awaken Silicon Island, and Tiger Spine Island would have survived. I didn't plan to save these fellow Taoists. Xiao Hua shook his head. Fellow Taoist Bai, your words are too heavy. Of course not. Bai Min said anxiously, although Taoist Master Xiao didn't intend to save us, this is the truth. If Taoist Master Xiao didn't show up, we would have died long ago. Taoist Master Xiao can't erase this matter. Alas, all right. Xiao Hua said helplessly, don't say so many useless words. I promise to save these disciples. Thank you, Taoist Master Xiao. Bai Min was overjoyed. However, before he could finish thanking, Xiao Hua said again, however, I can't save them for nothing. Of course. Bai Min smiled apologetically. Senior, if you have any conditions, just say it. Xiao Hua nodded. Just as he was about to say that he would bring their storage pouches, he thought of something. These are all Qi refinement disciples. What good things can they have in their storage pouches? Don't ask for something else. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua said, yes, I have 3 conditions. Bai Min said somewhat uneasily, Taoist Master Xiao, if your conditions aren't difficult, can you save the disciples of the islands first? If they're frozen in the ice for too long, it's not suitable for their swimming physique. Fine, Xiao Hua nodded. Zhao's conditions aren't difficult. I'll save you and your disciples first. Thank you, Taoist Xiao. Bai Min imitated the fisherman and called him Taoist Xiao. Xiao Hua glanced at Shui. Seeing that there was no movement, he flew above the ice layer. The gigantic block of ice floated on the surface of the sea. It was 1,000 feet wide and several tens of feet deep. It was sparkling and translucent, looking extremely beautiful in the dark of the night. Go! Xiao Hua waved his hand and the fire carpet flew out. Although this thing was destroyed by Xiao Hua's spirit fire, Xiao Hua's fire controlling technique was very subtle and didn't damage the formation too much. Therefore, after obtaining Fei Xiqing's storage pouch, Xiao Hua easily repaired it with the 5 elements refining technique. The fire carpet flew into the air, and as Xiao Hua poured his magic power into it, it gradually grew bigger, turning into a layer of fire that was hundreds of feet wide. The thin flame was greenish-red in color, and its temperature was extremely high. Following Xiao Hua's incantation, the layer of fire slowly descended and gradually seeped into the layer of ice. Immediately, the unbreakable layer of ice immediately turned into ice water and mixed into the sea. What caused Bai Min to be astonished was that the fire net avoided all of the disciples without exception. Not even a single hair was burned. Although the disciples rescued by Xiao Hua weren't in any danger, their vitality was greatly damaged. They didn't have time to thank Xiao Hua, and they all used their flying talismans to land on the shore, took medicinal pills, and adjusted their breathing. And Xiao Hua had to use nearly 8 fire carpets in a row before he managed to save all the disciples of the various islands. Seeing that Bai Min was busy arranging the cultivators, Xiao Hua didn't say much and flew to Shui's side, sitting close to her. What did Empress mean by Shui's words? Xiao Hua secretly tried to figure out Empress's tone just now, trying to judge whether it was good or bad. Unfortunately, Empress's tone was extremely indifferent. So how could Xiao Hua judge whether it was good or bad? Forget it. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and shook his head. If it's good fortune, it's not a disaster. If it's a disaster, it can't be avoided. Empress is also extremely right. If you know too much, you will inevitably be afraid of everything. It's really boring. Immediately, Xiaohua took out the pale white jade slip to check. After Xiaohua's spiritual sense entered it, he looked at it for a moment, and his face revealed a strange expression. Isn't this the simplified green seal text? Xiaohua blinked his eyes and secretly laughed in his heart. The words of the 10,000 demon realm were actually similar to the green seal text. Of course, the words were much simpler, and since this simplified green seal text could be written into the jade slip, it naturally lost the power of heaven and earth, and lost the essence of the green seal text. 10,000 demon realm. Demon, what is this thing? Xiaohua looked at it for a moment, and knew that it was impossible to comprehend it in a short time, so he put it away. His eyes looked at the dark sky, the little stars, and the curved moon, and thought, 10,000 demon realm is actually the same space as the Dawn Rain continent. What does it look like? If I'm not wrong, I should be from the 10,000 demon realm. If so, I am also a demon? If I'm a demon, why can't Empress see it? She still thinks I'm a cultivator of the Dawn Rain continent? It's really strange. I finally know the origin of Xiao Huang. It's actually the extremely powerful Di Ting. Damn, even Dai is afraid of it. If this kid becomes Di Ting in the future, won't he? Xiao Hua suddenly thought, can he absorb the souls of spirit-severing cultivators? In that case, this young master's matter will be easily solved. AI, it's not that simple. Didn't Empress say? Xiao Huang still has a long way to go to become Di Ting. This road is so long that this young master can even split his spirit. I still need this kid to vent my anger for this young master. Xiao Hua was disheartened again. This guy only knows how to sleep and eat and sleep. Thinking of Xiao Huang's cuteness, the corner of Xiao Hua's mouth unconsciously revealed a trace of a smile, like a loving mother. Right? If Xiao Huang is Di Ting, what's that Xiao He? Why haven't this young master met Xiao He? Ming Hua, what kind of famous character is this? He actually has the supreme technique of the 10,000 demon realm. And he even came to the Dawn Rain continent. And with such a technique, he must hide in the dark to cultivate. He must have come here to cultivate. Oh my, the external incarnation technique is comparable to the 1 qi into 3 pure ones of Shangqing heaven. Right, what is this Shangqing heaven? What is 1 qi into 3 pure ones? Empress's words are really profound. Also, external incarnation, why? Does it sound similar to the ghost cultivator's technique in countless ways? It seems to be somewhat similar to the sword heart energy seed technique. Xiao Hua suddenly realized, could it be, at the end of the technique, no matter what it is, it will all return to the origin? The 1 qi into 3 pure ones must also be a cultivation technique like this. Chapter 2144. That's right, that Zhang Qingshao is from the devil sect. There must be something like this in their cultivation technique. It's just a matter of who can cultivate it to the extreme. Thinking of Zhang Qingshao, Xiao Hua was full of doubts. He thought of Xiao Yuehong and Gong Mingwei. The night passed quickly, and at dawn, Xue woke up. Seeing Xiao Hua by her side, she smiled sweetly, clapped her hands, and immediately handed the pink jade slip to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua only glanced at it with his divine sense and knew that there was still a restriction inside, so he didn't ask any more questions and carefully put it into his space. He understood that Xue would definitely not say anything until the time was right. Husband, those fishermen have all been rescued, right? Xue's gaze swept across the many disciples resting in the distance and understood. And your husband was fortunate enough to not disappoint you. Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, why did my wife suddenly cultivate? Did you have some enlightenment? That's right. Xue smiled sweetly and said, the last knot in my heart has been untied. I feel that I can enter the foundation establishment stage at any time. Ha, great. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He actually somersaulted a few times in the air and said, this trip to QC was not in vain. He, Xue also laughed. It's a pity that I was comprehending and could not see my husband display his might. Ah, my wife is wrong. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and pinched Xue Xue's nose and said with a smile, "The one who displayed his might yesterday was not your husband, but someone else." There was someone else who helped? Xue Xue was surprised and looked around. Unfortunately, other than Bai Min and the others who had already stood up and were walking over, there were no other cultivators. It was very lively yesterday. Xiaohua had a mysterious expression on his face. He then looked at Bai Min and the others and said in a low voice, "However, these cultivators brought a bamboo pole for me to strike. After I'm done, I'll explain everything to you in detail." Bamboo pole? What do you mean? Xue Xue asked curiously. At this time, Bai Min and the others had already arrived. The four of them bowed and said, "I and the others thank fellow Taoist Xiao for saving our lives." There's no need to bow. Xiaohua said with a smile, "Yesterday, fellow Taoist Bai Min has already paid his respects to quite a few people. If it wasn't for him begging me bitterly, I would have left long ago." When Bai Min heard this, his heart warmed. He was very pleased with himself. He felt that everything that happened yesterday was not in vain. That's right. We all know fellow Taoist Bai's feelings for us. He could have escaped, but he chose to stay with us instead. In the future, the connection between Awakening Silicon Island and our 3 islands will be even closer. Ko Qinglian said with deep affection. A strange expression appeared on Xiaohua's face. Damn it, this Ko Qinglian couldn't have been interested in Bai Min for a long time, right? She actually took this opportunity to confess today? This is what I should do. Bai Min said with a smile. However, I've already agreed to 3 of fellow Taoist Zhao's conditions yesterday. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please give me your orders. I hope that the 4 of us will be able to satisfy fellow Taoist Zhao's requests. Yes, fellow Taoist Xiao, please speak. The 3 of them also smiled apologetically. This fellow is quite tactful. Xiaohua secretly gave a thumbs up to Bai Min in his heart. He said again, "My 3 conditions are very simple. First, I also want to hunt some sea beasts in the heavenly sea. I hope that the island masters of the various islands in the sea will show mercy and not blame me for overstepping my boundaries." Fellow Taoist Xiao must be joking. Bai Min immediately replied, "Not to mention fellow Taoist Xiao's kindness to us, even if fellow Taoist Xiao brought his dual cultivation partner here to hunt sea beasts, we won't interfere too much." "Then that's good." Xiaohua said with a smile, "My second condition is, can you let me cultivate your water escape technique?" Water escape technique? Bai Min was slightly stunned. He looked at the others and was very puzzled. Ding Xuan thought for a moment and smiled apologetically. Is fellow Taoist Xiao talking about the technique that we use to enter and exit the sea? And that's right. Could it be that it's not a water escape technique? Xiaohua knew that he was wrong. I'll let fellow Taoist Xiao know that it's not a water escape technique, but a type of water dispelling technique. Ko Qinglian grinned and said, "It's an ordinary technique of the various islands in the sea. In essence, it's a flying technique." As she spoke, Ko Qinglian slapped her hand and took out a jade slip from her storage pouch. She handed it to Xiaohua and said, "If fellow Taoist Xiao is interested in this technique, I'll give it to you right away." So it's like that. Xiaohua was very disappointed. He received it with his hand and looked at it with his divine sense for a moment. He nodded and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Ko." Seeing Ko Qinglian rush to give the water-dispelling technique to Xiaohua, Ding Xuan smiled apologetically again and said, "I wonder what fellow Taoist Zhao's 3rd condition is? If my Tiger Spine Island has it, I'll definitely give it to you." When did these people become so respectful? They all want to curry favor with this young master? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood. His strength was comparable to 5 middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators, and he also had the backing of a cultivator like the Empress whose true cultivation was unknown. Which cultivator wouldn't want to make friends with him? Cough cough, my last condition is, who knows where Sunset Island is? After Xiaohua finished speaking, he looked at the 4 people very eagerly. Sunset Island? Sure enough, the 4 people looked at each other in dismay. You look at me, I look at you. It seems that none of them have heard of this island. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'll let you know. Among the various islands in the sea, there are Star Bright Island, Moon Island, Broken Star Island, Sunrise Island, Star Island. And there's also Scorching Sun Island. However, I've never heard of Sunset Island. Xiang Wenqing finally got the chance and hurriedly said, "Then, is there any island that has the celestial race?" Xiaohua thought for a moment and still asked, If we're talking about the celestial race, then the various islands in the sea should all be counted." Bai Min said with a smile, "As for the true celestial race, I'm afraid they're already gone." "All right, if fellow Taoist Xiao wants to find Sunset Island, my Silicon Islands records are more comprehensive. Moreover, my island master also has a wide range of connections. Fellow Taoist Xiao might as well return with I. You'll definitely be able to obtain some information." Ding Xuan, Xiang Wenqing, and Ko Qinglian smiled bitterly. As expected, Bai Min was the first to say this sentence. However, they were also clear about Bai Min's righteous act yesterday, so they couldn't snatch it from him. Thus, the three of them looked at each other and smiled. Since fellow Taoist Bai invited fellow Taoist Xiao to the island, we won't fight over it. We'll go report to the island master and ask him to make a decision. Immediately, the three of them each took out a small storage pouch and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, these three conditions are practically unspoken. We still feel apologetic in our hearts. These sea beasts' inner cores, beast skins, and other items are the specialties of QC. Please kindly accept them." Haha. Xiaohua was secretly happy in his heart. Truly, he got whatever he wanted. Sometimes, some words not spoken were more important than spoken. Xiaohua pretended to decline a few times, but he accepted them. Immediately, the four island masters formed a team. Xiaohua carried Shui and followed everyone into the sky, heading towards QC. Behind them, in the fishing village, many fishermen indeed erected Xiaohua's longevity memorial arch. At first, they were grateful, but later, as long as they paid their respects to Xiaohua, after going out to sea, they would be calm and even had a bountiful harvest. However, the fishermen who didn't pay their respects were far worse. It was unknown whether it was true or if they made it up. In any case, as time passed, all the fishermen in QC began to pay their respects. Taoist Master Zhao's name actually became their guardian god. Sometimes, faith came about like this. Perhaps it was a coincidence, perhaps it was true, perhaps it was false. However, as for whether it was true or false, even the believer couldn't say for sure. And even if it was the believer, how could he say it clearly? The depths of QC were different from the seaside. Xiaohua, who was surrounded by the crowd, felt that all he could see was waves. He couldn't see north, south, east, and west. Other than the sparkling light in his eyes, he couldn't see anything else. Moreover, the sound of waves in his ears was mixed with the whistling sea breeze and the cries of seabirds. After flying for an hour, Xiaohua still couldn't see anything different. It was simply like looking at a mountain and running a horse to death. Good boy, this young master is a directionally challenged idiot. On Dawn Rain Continent, let alone here. Xiaohua sighed and stole a glance at Shui. At this moment, Shui's eyes were also filled with confusion. Naturally, she had the same thoughts as Xiaohua. As they were traveling, Bai Min and the others paused slightly and turned to fly towards the north. After a while, they once again flew towards the east. Seeing this, Xiaohua was somewhat bewildered. He couldn't help but ask, "Fellow Taoist Bai, why is that? Wouldn't it be fine if we just directly flew over? Why are we taking a detour?" Bai Min smiled apologetically and said, "I'll let fellow Taoist Xiao know. Just now, the place we passed by was a dangerous place. Its range was several tens of miles. Within it, divine sense was disturbed, true qi, and true essence were also disturbed. Many times, flying techniques couldn't be used. Ordinary cultivators who didn't know about it would most likely lose their lives if they fell into it." "Oh, there's such a thing." Xiaohua suddenly realized. Wasn't this similar to the forbidden and dangerous places on Dawn Rain Continent? Exactly. Ko Qinglian grinned and said, "This place is still the inner sea of my QC. It's far from the deep sea. According to my island master, not only are there many dangerous places like this, there are also many powerful sea beasts in the sea. Even if Gold Core, Nascent Soul, and other seniors were there, they could be attacked. Hearing this, Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled and asked, "This Xiao knows that as long as those demonic beasts reach the 8th stage, they can transform. Their strength is comparable to nascent soul cultivators. Since those sea beasts can attack nascent soul cultivators, and it said that even spirit severing stage seniors are disturbed, these sea beasts should be around the 8th stage. Why didn't they transform?" The reason why Xiaohua asked this was because he had just seen Yang Yang and die, so he was extremely puzzled. "I know about this," Ding Xuan said with a smile. "My island master once said that because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the QC becomes thinner, although those powerful sea beasts can defeat nascent soul cultivators, because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is innately thin, it's not enough for them to transform. If they can't do it in the deep sea, then they'll come to the near sea." Shui Shui said with a smile, "The spiritual energy of heaven and earth here is still abundant. Hehe, if the 8th stage sea beasts come to the near sea, those spirit-severing stage seniors, I'm afraid they'll swarm over," Ding Xuan said with a smile. Chapter 2145. So that's how it is. Xiaohua slapped his forehead, suddenly enlightened. Yes, although the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the distant sea was insufficient, it was still possible to survive. In the coastal sea, it was true that it could transform, but before it could transform, its inner core would be taken away by cultivators. How could it still cultivate? And for powerful human cultivators, if they wanted to hunt 7th or 8th stage sea beasts, they had to take the risk of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth being insufficient. They had to take the risk of being killed by sea beasts. In this way, each of them formed a kind of restraint. This was also the reason why there were so few demon cores in Xiaoyu continent. However, why is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth so thin in the depths of Guihe Sea? An even more terrible question appeared in the mind of Xiaohua, who liked to think. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, we have to take our leave." Just as he was thinking, Ding Xuan, Ko Qinglian, and Xiang Wenqing stopped in midair with their disciples. They cupped their hands and said, "Our 3 islands are on the east side of Awakening Silicon Island. We have to part here. Once again, thank you for saving us, fellow Taoist Xiao. If you have free time, please come to our 3 islands. Island Master will definitely thank you." The 3 of them said, "Okay, I have visited Awakening Silicon Island. If I have the chance, I will also go to the 3 islands to take a look. In addition, if the 3 of you have news about Sunset Island, please also inform me." Xiaohua said a few polite words and parted ways with the 3 of them. After the 3 of them left with their disciples, Xiaohua asked again in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Bai, I am not afraid of you laughing at me. This Guihe Sea is so big. If you only rely on the sun for directions, I am afraid it is not reliable. How do you distinguish the direction? How do you identify the route?" Hehe, Bai Min clapped his hand and took out a spoon-like light green magic tool. He handed it over and said with a smile, "This is the magic tool used by our overseas islands, Compass Point. You only need to carve the map of the sea near you into it, and that magic tool will be able to guide the direction." "Ah, I see." Xiaohua laughed. "Looks like I am not too bad at directions. Everyone is a sea idiot when they are on the sea. By the way, fellow Taoist Bai, can you give me a copy of the map of the Sinan Sea and the QC?" Xiaohua asked without any trace of politeness. Bai Min looked a little embarrassed. He smiled apologetically and said, "This kind of artifact and sea chart are the secrets of each island. I can't take it. However, if fellow Taoist Xiao wants it, I'll mention it to the island master when I see him later. With fellow Taoist Zhao's kindness to my Silicon Island, it shouldn't be a problem." "All right," Xiaohua nodded. He didn't mind. If the Awakening Silicon Island wasn't given to him, he could just casually find one on the Qianhe Sea. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, a thumb-sized black shadow appeared on the horizon. Bai Min pointed at it and said with a smile, "This is my Awakening Silicon Island." Xiaohua gazed into the distance. That island was truly too far away, and he couldn't see it with his eyes. Xiaohua was also too lazy to release his Buddhist consciousness. He only nodded slightly and followed by Min as they flew straight to awaken Silicon Island. Only when they flew closer did Xiaohua get a clear look. He was somewhat flabbergasted again. This island was really too big. Its circumference was actually 100 li. Moreover, there were hundreds of small islands of various sizes clustered around it. These hundreds of small islands seemed to form a large-scale formation, protecting this awakening Silicon Island from all sides. Bai Min even started to lead Xiaohua around the island from afar. They flew to the east and flew to the west. Obviously, they were avoiding the restrictions within. This defense is too tight. Xiaohua said with a slight smile. We can't not defend. Bai Min smiled bitterly. The Qianhe Sea is not like the Xiaoyu continent. Not only do we have violent astronomical phenomena, such as hurricanes, fierce rain, and even inexplicable thunder. Even the tsunamis that we frequently encounter are hard to withstand with human strength. Not to mention that occasionally, some tyrannical sea beasts come here. It's really hard for you. Xiaohua understood the difficulty of survival in the Qianhe Sea. Bai Min sent out the communication talisman. That light blue flame rushed into the water and disappeared in an instant. I hope my island master can have the information that fellow Taoist Xiao wants to know. Bai Min carefully smiled apologetically. I hope so. Although Xiaohua said so, he was still nervous in his heart. Haoming City didn't know, Bai Min and the others didn't know, but this Sunset Island might not be easy to find. Sure enough, several days later, Xiaohua's face carried a trace of disappointment. He left the awakening Silicon Island accompanied by an early gold core cultivator. Husband, it looks like there's trouble, Shui said considerately. Both Island Master Zhang of awakened Silicon Island and their self-proclaimed knowledgeable elder have said that they've never heard of it. I'm afraid it won't be easy to find Sunset Island. Yes, that Zhang Ye said it clearly. The tides rise and fall of the Qianhe Sea, and the islands in it are also uncertain. That Sunset Island is probably one of them, and now it has already sunk into the sea. Where can we find it? However, Island Master Zhang also said that many islands changed their names because their island masters died or because their cultivators declined. Maybe Sunset Island still exists. It's all possible. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Otherwise, Zhang Yi wouldn't have told us the locations of the 4 largest islands in the Qianhe Sea: Scorching Sun Island, Ice Blade Island, Gale Island, and Yensen Island. Where should we find them? Then where should we go now? Shui asked again. From Island Master Zhang's tone, the locations of these 4 islands are very far from the coastal waters. Moreover, they are very far from each other. This Zhang Yi is quite righteous. Not only did he give me the compass, but he also gave me the sea map. Xiaohua clapped his hand, and a light cyan compass appeared in his hand. He probed it with his divine sense. After looking at it for a long time, he clapped his hand again and took out the sea map he obtained from Haoming City. He pointed his hand, and the sea map flickered with a blue brilliance and fell into the compass. Then, a layer of brilliance overflowed from one end of the compass to the other end. Great. Xiaohua checked again and said with a smile, 60% of the 2 sea maps match, and the other 40% complement each other. The sea map of the Qianhe Sea is considered complete. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart suddenly jumped. He raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent. What's wrong? Husband? Shui always knew about Xiaohua's whims and asked with concern. Xiaohua frowned for a long time and shook his head slightly. He said puzzledly, there seems to be some warning signs. However, I don't have any way to check the warning signs. Perhaps someone on the Dawn Rain continent wants to plot against me again? Who exactly is it? With husband's cultivation, I'm afraid only a Jindan cultivator can cause a warning sign. Shui also pondered and asked. Husband, you must be careful. When we return from the Qianhe Sea, we must be even more careful. We must take the transportation array all the way. And, for safety's sake, that's exactly what I have to do. If Xiaohua was himself, it would be fine. However, he couldn't ignore Xue Xue's safety. Zhong Tianyao's previous threat wasn't without reason. In this world, there were many high-level cultivators who didn't care about their status. Chapter 2146. Let's go. That scorching sun island is quite close to here. Let's go there before. Xiaohua stretched out his hand, held Xue Xue's soft hand, and said with a smile, "We don't need to hurry. If you can build your foundation on this boundless sea, how wonderful would that be?" Exactly, that's what I was thinking. Xue Xue also covered her mouth and said with a smile, "That scorching sun island might be another name for Sunset Island. Let's go slowly and enjoy the scenery of the sea." Then Xiaohua took Xue Xue, and the two of them really flew leisurely. The sea map in the compass was very complete. The sea map in Haoming City recorded some islands and the situation on the islands, while the sea map in Awakening Silicon Island mostly recorded the routes between the islands, the dangerous places in the sea, and the distribution of sea beasts. Xiaohua took the compass and followed Xue Xue all the way. They avoided all the dangerous places, and Xiaohua didn't let go of any place with sea beasts. He didn't know what these sea beasts were for, so he hunted some and put them in the space. If it weren't for the fact that his space didn't have enough space to hold seawater, with Xiaohua's greed, he might have taken these living sea beasts into the space. Moreover, for Xue Xue's foundation building, Xiaohua didn't walk much every day. He walked at sunrise and stopped at sunset. According to the instructions of the compass, he found an uninhabited island or reef, and laid down a rabbit array to rest or cultivate. This trip took more than 10 days, and they hadn't even reached half of the journey from Awakening Silicon Island to Scorching Sun Island. On this day, Xiaohua and Xue Xue landed on a slightly bigger island. The sky was already dark, and the sky was still clear before. At this time, the sea breeze gradually rose, and dark clouds began to condense in the sky. Beside the dark clouds, there was a dark red color. Good heavens! Xiaohua looked at the sky. An unparalleled might of heaven and earth was faintly brewing. He couldn't help but be speechless. It's often said that man can conquer the heavens, and cultivators also have the responsibility to go against the heavens. But this might of heaven, I don't know what kind of cultivation base a cultivator has to contend against it. Young master's cultivation is still shallow. Let's go with the flow for now. Xiaohua pursed his lips and took out the flowing cloud movement technique. He had already finished reading the explanation of the 10,000 demon realm. After all, he had some understanding of the green seal text. These simplified green seal text were not particularly difficult for him. In fact, he had already mastered the so-called water-dispelling incantation during the few days he was on Awakened Silicon Island. What kind of movement technique is this? Isn't this wind evasion? Xiaohua simply read through the movement technique's training method in the jade slip and immediately understood. Presently, he'd already cultivated the wood movement, earth movement, and fire movement, and he was even cultivating the lightning movement amongst lightning cultivators. So there was probably no cultivator on Dawn Rain continent that was more proficient in movement techniques than him. Xiaohua only looked at it once and immediately understood that this so-called flowing cloud movement technique was the wind evasion elementary movement technique that he had never heard of before. It was a technique that borrowed the power of the wind to display a movement technique that was similar to the flowing cloud movement technique. Good boy, young master still hasn't thought of finding some water movement technique or metal movement technique to complete the 5 elements movement technique. Unexpectedly, there's this wind evasion that I've never thought of before. 10,000 demon realms wind evasion. This empress, what kind of true body does she have? Xiaohua was shocked and overjoyed. He was amazed at the wonders of this world's cultivation techniques. After a moment, Xiaohua once again calmed down. He immersed his spirit into the jade slip and carefully comprehended it. After an unknown amount of time, a kacha sound of thunder woke Xiaohua up from his meditation. When Xiaohua opened his eyes, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. At this time, above the entire Gui Sea, layers of dark clouds covered half of the sky. It was actually as boundless as the Gui Sea. And the rolling dark clouds kept rolling, as if there were endless ghosts in the clouds. The rolling dark clouds took on all kinds of shapes. There were mountains, rivers, spirit herbs, birds. Within these rolling dark clouds, there was a faint dark red light that flickered. It flickered in and out of existence, and a boundless majesty overflowed from within the dark clouds. "Grandma, it's really magnificent." Xiaohua was speechless. He could only sigh in his heart. It wasn't that he hadn't seen a thunderstorm before, but he had never seen such a magnificent thunderstorm. These oppressive dark clouds were like a pressure on one's heart. Following the first thunder just now, like a firecracker, the sound of thunder continued to resound. Immediately after, a pitter-patter sound of raindrops the size of beans came one after another, hitting the surface of the Guihe Sea. One after another, fist-sized depressions appeared on the surface of the sea. At the same time, the wind became stronger and stronger. The waves gradually formed. At first, it was small waves, then it became huge waves. However, the rumbling sound of the waves was far from being able to suppress the flashing thunder in the sky. Xiaohua was originally sitting within the rabbit formation. Most of the rainwater was blocked by the formation. A layer of faintly discernible faint golden brilliance flashed around Xiaohua and Shui. However, when the many lightning bolts above his head were like little golden snakes swimming around, Xiaohua suddenly had a familiar feeling. A scene suddenly appeared in Xiaohua's mind. It was this kind of night filled with thunder, and a lonely figure was sitting cross-legged on the same island as tonight. In the pouring rain, strands of lightning struck that figure. Could it be me? Am actually not afraid of heavenly lightning? Xiaohua's heart surged with pride. If I am struck by heavenly lightning again, would I be able to remember something? But if it doesn't work, this heavenly lightning is not a joke. This young master's physical body, cultivation, and so on, will all be damaged. This hesitant thought was merely a flash. Xiaohua stood up. If I can recall my memories, even if my cultivation is damaged, so what? Moreover, didn't this young master get struck by lightning before? Seeing Xiaohua stand up, Shui, who was already frightened by the lightning, was stunned and hurriedly asked, "Husband, what are you going to do?" Xiaohua hesitated. He didn't know how to explain it to Shui. After thinking for a while, he smiled and said, "This husband has some things that I have to do. Now I should do it." "You have to do it?" Shui frowned slightly. "Could it be more important than your life?" "Yes." Xiaohua nodded and replied, "Living muddle-headedly is not as good as dying clearly." Xiaohua's words were said to himself. However, the speaker had intentions and the listener had intentions. These words seemed to have pierced Shui's heart. Shui's face immediately flushed red. Her eyes flickered slightly. She nodded firmly and said loudly, "Well said, husband. Living muddle-headedly is not as good as dying clearly. This concubine will accompany you." "Ah? What are you going to do?" Xiaohua was shocked. He pulled Shui and said, "This husband still has some confidence that he won't be struck by lightning. Can you do it?" Husband." Shui held Xiaohua's hand and said with a smile, "Actually, this concubine could have taken the Ling Lei pill long ago. With husband's secret cultivation method and the Tian mending pill, this concubine should have a 50% chance of reaching foundation establishment. However, this concubine didn't dare to reach foundation establishment because in my heart, I couldn't bear to part with husband. There was a trace of apprehension in my heart. Husband, I'm afraid you don't know why this concubine came to Guihe Sea. This concubine's parents met each other when they were traveling on Guihe Sea. And this concubine also knows that they came to Guihe Sea together to reach foundation establishment and never returned. This kind of gloominess forced this concubine to not dare to rashly take that step. And now, since husband wants to take the risk, how can this concubine not accompany you? So that's how it is." Xiaohua immediately understood why Shui, who had already cultivated the Ling Lei pill, Tian mending pill, and even the dragon transformation art, still hadn't reached foundation establishment. Obviously, her mental state wasn't perfect. Now that she heard his words, her mental state was perfect. If she didn't reach foundation establishment now, her mental state would inevitably be lacking. This was the best time for Xue to reach foundation establishment. Ha! Since that's the case, wife please. Xiaohua laughed and pulled Xue out of the formation. The huge sea breeze mixed with bean-sized raindrops hit the two of them. Xue's body faintly glowed. Obviously, it was a defensive yellow talisman. However, there was no movement on Xiaohua's body. Obviously, this force wasn't enough to trigger a reaction from his protective light. Wife please. Since it was Xue who reached foundation establishment, Xiaohua naturally couldn't attract the lightning first. He smiled and said, "Very well, I'll give you a chance to protect this concubine." Xue laughed and clapped her hands, taking out the Ling Lei pill refined by Xiaohua. "Take out the Tian mending pill as well, just in case." Xiaohua reminded. "Crow's beak." Xue scolded jokingly, "The Tian mending pill is in the storage bag. This concubine can take it out with a raise of her hand. There's no need to be so cautious." Seeing that Xue didn't have any burden in her heart, Xiaohua was secretly happy. Xue sat cross-legged and looked deeply at Xiaohua. She raised her hand and put the Ling Lei pill into her mouth. Once the Ling Lei pill entered her mouth, it immediately turned into a surging current that rushed into Xue's meridians. Although Xue was already prepared, she was still shocked by the medicinal power of the Ling Lei pill. Of course, Xue was only startled for a moment. Immediately after, the mental cultivation method of the Thunder Control Sex Sun Lei Palace began to circulate and forcefully guided the medicinal power to flow through her meridians. After the medicinal power had circulated 9 cycles in her meridians, Xue's true qi had increased by 20%. Luckily, Xue's meridians had been tempered by the dragon transformation art and had already become thicker by 30%. This amount of true qi was still within the limits of her meridians. Hong! A loud sound rang out and Xue's mind exploded. The medicinal power of the Ling Lei pill had already seeped out of her meridians and directly entered Xue's blood vessels. Xue's blood vessels had already come into contact with the medicinal power of the Ling Lei pill. Immediately, like an ignited explosive, it began to explode bit by bit and pushed forward bit by bit, gradually approaching her heart. This is bad. Xue was alarmed. She could use the dragon transformation art to control the true qi in her meridians, but how could she control her blood vessels? This was something she had never thought of before. Chapter 2147. Heaven Mend Pill. Xue instantly thought of Xiaohua's warning. Without hesitation, she slapped her hand and the Heaven Mend pill entered her mouth. Why did you take the Heaven Mend pill so early? Xiaohua had been paying attention to Xue, but he didn't dare to use his divine sense. Seeing Xue take the Heaven Mend pill from the start, he couldn't help but be shocked. As soon as the Heaven Mend pill entered her mouth, a flood immediately rushed into her meridians. It followed the path of the thunder pill and seeped into her blood vessels. At this time, the unstoppable explosion had already spread throughout Xue's blood vessels and rushed straight to her heart. Rumble! When the Heaven Mend pill's medicinal power reached her heart, Xue's heart suddenly swelled like a bubble. Xue's face was snow-white. She finally understood why the Xue family with the Thunder Beast bloodline had so few foundation establishment cultivators. The Thunder Beast's true blood was truly tyrannical. It was absolutely not something a human cultivator's body could withstand. Fortunately, just as Xue's heart was about to burst, the Heaven Mend pill's medicinal power arrived. It quickly repaired the damaged areas and continuously strengthened the heart's toughness. Roar! Just as Xue's blood vessels were stimulated by the thunder pill's medicinal power, she raised her hands and let out a roar similar to that of a thunder beast. As Xue waved her arms, a faint shadow of a thunder beast flew out from Xue's body. At the same time, Xue's snow-white face unexpectedly became a bit sinister. She actually showed signs of turning into a thunder beast. No way! Shui Shui won't turn into a female thunder beast, right? Xiao Hua was stunned as he watched from the side. His mind raced. Not only did the terrifying figure and face of a female thunder beast appear in his mind, he even thought that if Shui Shui really turned into a female thunder beast, should he fall in love with someone else? It was also at this time that the true qi in Shui Shui's meridians suddenly changed. Threads of flickering lightning formed in the true qi. Her true qi suddenly increased and expanded by more than 30%. If it was an ordinary cultivator, their meridians would have been filled with true qi when they reached foundation establishment. Now that their meridians suddenly increased by 30%, they would have already burst. Even Shui Shui, who thought that her meridians were already full after taking the Ling Lei pill and heavenly mending pill, the sudden appearance of true qi caused her meridians to swell. Fortunately, Shui Shui had already practiced the dragon transformation art for a long time, and her meridians were already very tough. She only reached her limit after her qi increased by 30%. However, if he added even half a point more, he was afraid that he would have to examine Xiao Hua's alchemy technique again. Gotcha! A faint sound came from Shui Shui's meridians. It was the sound of a trace of true essence condensing. In Shui Shui's heart, this voice was like the sound of nature. Immediately after, a series of popping sounds, similar to the popping sounds in his blood vessels, resounded throughout his meridians. The true qi in Shui Shui's meridians showed a series of reactions, and a lot of true essence began to condense. Now is the time. Shui Shui didn't know how many times she had already imagined this in her heart. At this time, seeing that the time was ripe, she slapped her hand, took out the foundation establishment pill from her storage pouch, and put it into her mouth. Swish! Shui Shui also released her divine sense at this time, wanting to extend it in the direction of the Kuei He Hai. First, it was several tens of zhang, then it was close to li, and finally it was several li away. Not only that, but the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 10 li had already converged. In the air within these several li, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to condense, and bit by bit, visible to the naked eye, crystals gradually formed. Although Shui Shui's foundation establishment aura couldn't compare to Xiao Hua's, it was still much more vast than an ordinary cultivator's foundation establishment aura. Gotcha! At this time, tiny streaks of lightning began to flicker around Shui Shui's divine sense. Clearly, they were attracted by Shui Shui's foundation establishment aura. Not good. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He knew that this lightning would strike Shui Shui, and even Shui Shui's body. He really wanted to release his divine sense to help Shui Shui resist, but at this time, it was also the crucial moment for Shui Shui's foundation establishment. He was afraid that if he released his divine sense, it would disturb Shui Shui's foundation establishment. How about, I go somewhere else? Xiao Hua immediately thought of the taboo that two cultivators couldn't enter foundation establishment at the same time. At this time, the thunder beast behind Shui Shui roared and gradually rose above Shui Shui's head, reaching a height of more than 10 zhang. Gotcha! Although the lightning struck Shui Shui's divine sense, causing her Niwen palace to be unable to escape the pain, the majority of the lightning was withstood by the thunder beast's shadow. The thunder beast was also in pain after being struck by the lightning. It roared and hammered its own chest. The thunder beast's body actually grew slightly bigger after being struck by the lightning. Shui Shui's Dharma body isn't afraid of ordinary lightning. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. His figure flew several tens of zhang before stopping in midair. His eyes were bright as he stared at Shui Shui. Lightning continuously struck the thunder beast's shadow. Shui Shui's face showed an extremely painful expression. Although the thunder beast's shadow had now risen to a height of 10 zhang, there was still some true qi in her meridians that hadn't been converted into true essence. More and more lightning was attracted by Shui Shui and continuously struck the thunder beast's shadow. The thunder beast's shadow began to show signs of collapsing. Xiao Hua was very anxious. His figure flew again, but before he could fly several tens of zhang, he saw the thunder beast's shadow wave its hand again. As if it was an instinct, magic power similar to a spell appeared on its hand. Looking at the Thunder Beast's shadow again, two balls of brilliance suddenly flashed. It was actually the vague appearance of the male and female Thunder Beasts when Xiaohua refined the Thunder Pill. Gotcha! Following the Thunder Beast's wave of its arm, a portion of the lightning that was originally attacking it was actually driven by it and turned to attack other lightning. The art of controlling lightning. Xiaohua, who had been staring at the scene, was pleasantly surprised. He understood that this was the Thunder Beast's innate ability. Just how vast was this scene? Hundreds of zhang high in the sky, the Thunder Beast's shadow with green and red brilliance was flapping its wings. Its hands were constantly forming spells, and dozens or even hundreds of golden lightning were driven by it. They separately struck the sky, contending with the lightning falling from the sky. This Thunder Beast's hand? I'm afraid it's the art of controlling lightning. Xiaohua understood that the Thunder Beast's shadow used it again, and he had long memorized the art of controlling lightning in his heart. However, when he tried to use it, his magic power was clearly surging, but the lightning didn't listen to his command at all. Why is this? Xiaohua's gaze swept quickly, trying to find the reason. In the end, Xiaohua's gaze fell on the brilliance of the male and female Thunder Beasts in the Thunder Beast's shadow. Because every time the Thunder Beast's shadow formed a spell, the two balls of brilliance would flicker once. I'm afraid it's related to the two balls of light. However, just as Xiaohua was about to take a closer look, a hurricane began to appear in the night sky. A suction force appeared above Shue's head, and all the heaven and earth spiritual qi within several li was sucked in by Xiaohua like a whale. Chapter 2148. As the heaven and earth spiritual qi shrank, Shue's divine sense also converged. After the Thunder Beast's shadow waved a few lightning bolts, it simultaneously shrank back into Shue's body. Fortunately, after the Thunder Beast's shadow disappeared, Shue's somewhat deformed face regained its original beauty and whiteness. Xiaohua finally let out a sigh of relief. He nipped the thought of shifting his love in the bud. Rumble Shue's divine sense converged completely. Although the thunderstorm was still there, the lightning bolts no longer struck here. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over Shui. He knew that she was driving her true essence, using a new technique to open up new meridians and stabilize her early foundation establishment cultivation. This process would probably last for several days. Therefore, with a joyful laugh, his entire body flashed and flew up into the sky. His divine sense rushed to the place where the lightning was produced. The thunder and lightning seemed to have been enraged by Xiaohua. It was like the sound of a giant running, and also like a rushing river, unceasingly striking toward Xiaohua. Let the lightning come more fiercely. Xiaohua raised his arms and shouted, but his arrogant voice was drowned out by the sound of thunder. Gotcha! The first lightning bolt finally hit Xiaohua's body. Ouch! A burst of numbness came from his body, and within the numbness, there was a tearing pain. Xiaohua was in so much pain that he rolled in the air. Gotcha! The second and third lightning bolts came one after another. The power and energy within the lightning bolts were increasingly great. Xiaohua felt like he was being torn into several pieces. Damn it, something's wrong. Why is this feeling different from what I expected? Xiaohua immediately felt that something was wrong. This pain didn't seem to be as comfortable as he remembered, and it didn't evoke any of his previous memories. Better not. Xiaohua frowned. If I can't recall my memories, I'll lose my life for nothing. Seeing the fourth lightning bolt coming even more fiercely, Xiaohua shook his arm without hesitation. The Phoenix Dharma body flew out, and the lightning bolt hit the Dharma body. Xiaohua and the Phoenix Dharma body felt the same. The intense pain still came from the Dharma body, but Xiaohua understood that this pain was useful for refining the Dharma body. Moreover, the Dharma body that had been baptized by the thunder tribulation should be able to withstand the lightning of this ordinary thunderstorm. Unfortunately, Xiaohua didn't have the method to refine the Phoenix Dharma body. The thunder had a primitive function within it. It couldn't be used by Xiaohua. Yes, Xiaohua was a bit depressed. If I get the Dharma body incarnation method, I should be able to use the lightning thunder. Xiaohua was a bit depressed. rise, Xiaohua endured the pain, sat down cross-legged, and put his palms together. He used the exquisite Heart Sutra of the Buddhist sect. The 2 pieces of gold leaf from the Zhong family made up for the Heart Sutra. Now, there were only 9 empty slots in Xiaohua's exquisite Heart Sutra. However, these 9 slots were all at the top of the exquisite Heart Sutra. Except for the last 2 floors that were completely empty, only the last slot on the 3rd floor was empty. Seeing that Xiaohua wasn't willing to give up this precious cultivation opportunity, he released the Buddha Saraira. Once the Buddha Saraira flew out, the golden Buddha's light immediately lit up the entire night sky. Although this Buddha's light was very faint, it was extremely tenacious. It was like a small golden sword piercing through the night sky. The dazzling lightning in the entire night sky must be somewhat dim under this. Obviously, this lightning was not willing to succumb to the Buddha's light, or perhaps, the Buddha Saraira was the center of Xiaohua's divine sense. All of the lightning recklessly rushed towards the Buddha, whose eyes were already clear and whose eyes were indescribably compassionate. Kachacha, indescribable pain. This pain was far from being comparable to pain. It was similar to Xiaohua's experience of Huang Yi's 10,000 years of loneliness and hatred. This pain tormented Xiaohua's heart and tempered his will. At the same time, it also pushed Xiaohua's exquisite Heart Sutra to slowly advance. Every time the lightning struck the Buddha Saraira, Xiaohua's state of mind would have a trace of carving, and a drop of golden liquid would be formed on the Buddha Saraira. This liquid would either be smeared on the Buddha Saraira to fill the gap on the Buddha's body, or it would seep into the Buddha's body to condense the golden body of the Buddha Saraira. When Xiaohua's Heart Sutra couldn't catch up with the speed of the golden body, it slowly seeped into the golden lotus platform below the Buddha Saraira. As a result, that 2 qi-long Buddha Saraira gradually grew, and the golden lotus platform below the Buddha Saraira also gradually condensed into a 3rd lotus. Xiaohua, who was in the sky, was no longer sitting cross-legged. He was in the same posture as the Buddha Saraira, with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground. Moreover, his slender eyes were slightly opened. Admittedly, his eyes didn't have the kind of majesty that looked disdainfully at the heaven and earth, but the compassionate contained in his eyes was extremely similar to the Buddha Saraira's eyes. Xiaohua's state of mind, Xiaohua's compassionate heart was precisely the same as the compassionate heart of Buddhism. On the path of merit cultivation, this Buddha Saraira was being tempered by the lightning. Xiaohua's Buddhist Heart Sutra was also advancing at a rapid pace. Unfortunately, although the thunderstorm above the Qianhe Sea was several times more intense than the Xiaoyu continent, after 9 days, it also gradually stopped. That scorching sun revealed its head behind the dark clouds. The golden sunlight pierced through the dark clouds and shone on the waves of the Qianhe Sea. That wave was also like the thunderstorm, gradually calming down. Folds of broken gold covered the entire Qianhe Sea. Great! Xiaohua's eyes were wide open, and the compassionate in his eyes was slightly restrained. His gaze passed through thousands of miles of blue waves, and he whispered, "Amitabha, is there right and wrong in the world? How can the word compassionate fill it?" Withdraw. Xiaohua kept the Buddha Saraira and the phoenix celestial body back into his body. His divine sense swept over, but he saw that Xue Xue was sitting cross-legged on the cliff outside the rabbit array. There was no surprise in her eyes, and there was a faint brilliance flowing around her body. In his senses, it was the cultivation of the early stage of foundation establishment. Where did I get this feeling from? Xiaohua's mind turned again. When I was cultivating in the 10,000 demon realm, I attracted lightning? And I'm afraid so. Since the phoenix celestial body can cultivate in lightning, I naturally have this memory when I was cultivating in the 10,000 demon realm. Forget it. When this Xiao's cultivation is deeper, I'll flatter the Empress and see if I can follow her back to the 10,000 demon realm through the space crack. Maybe I can find my memory and find my birth and family. Then, Xiaohua flew to the top of the cliff, some distance away from Xue Xue, to protect her. Just like that, Xue Xue opened her eyes after a dozen or so days. In her bright eyes, there was not the joy and pride of other cultivators who just entered foundation establishment, but more, there was a flash of sadness. Xiao Hua, who was guarding beside Xue Xue, immediately sensed it and said in surprise, "Congratulations on advancing to Foundation Establishment. After Foundation Establishment, your lightning beast bloodline should be stable. Not only did your cultivation advance by leaps and bounds, but your strength now also surpasses those of the same level. Oh, right, has your realm stabilized?" A smile appeared on Xue Xue's face, and she covered her mouth and said, "I just entered Foundation Establishment, how can I dare to boast? Now that my realm is stable, husband doesn't have to worry." Ha! Xiao Hua laughed loudly, flew in front of Xue Xue, and lightly kissed Xue Xue's temples, saying, "Wife is indeed a genius, you really have great premonition. Before leaving the Imperial Thunder Sect, you said Foundation Establishment at Guehisi. You've only been at Guehisi for a few days, and sure enough, you said Foundation Establishment. Your husband really admires you." Hearing this, Xue Xue's previously hidden sadness suddenly reappeared. She immediately lowered her eyes, looked at the distant blue waves, and said with a forced smile, "How would I know what premonition is? It's just that my parents went missing at Guehisi, so I wanted to come to Guehisi to take a look." Xiao Hua did not notice Xue Xue's uneasiness. He reached out and held Xue Xue's slender waist, opened his mouth and licked Xue Xue's earlobe, whispering, "Wife, now, you're a Foundation Establishment cultivator. You and I dual cultivate, it won't affect your cultivation, right?" Hearing this, Xue Xue's face flushed red, and her body gradually became hot and dry because of Xiao Hua's flirting. The original trace of gloom in her heart had already flown out of the sky. "Wife, your husband has a dual cultivation technique here. It's far superior to that Qiu Mingwei's furnace technique." Xiao Hua said with a lewd smile, "Maybe you can even step into the middle stage of Foundation Establishment." Bah! Xue Xue lightly spat, turned her head, and instead bit Xiao Hua's ear, saying, "Don't mention that dirty man and woman to me." "Io," Xiao Hua begged for mercy in a low voice. "Your husband knows his wrongs. Your husband knows his wrongs. My wife and I are a match made in heaven. How can they compare to us?" Sigh. Xue Xue's heart seemed to emit a sorrowful sob, as if she was somewhat unwilling, however, Xue Xue's face was still red like fire, and the teeth that bit Xiao Hua's ear also loosened, replaced by her tongue. Her slightly nervous arms also stiffened, and she somewhat forcefully hugged Xiao Hua. "Great!" Xiao Hua secretly rejoiced, unable to suppress the impulse in his heart. His figure flashed, and he was about to fly down the cliff. Unfortunately, at this incomparably crucial moment, a weak divine sense swept over from afar, had already swept past Xiao Hua and Xue Xue, and immediately locked onto the two of them. Ah? Xiao Hua and Xue Xue were shocked, and Xue Xue's reaction was even more intense. She pushed Xiao Hua away, and urged her magic power to stand in midair. She hurriedly tidied up her clothes, and her face became even redder, and looked at Xiao Hua with eyes full of resentment. "Grandma, who is this? It must be on purpose." Xiao Hua's heart was immediately extinguished as if it had met with ice water. He jumped up in the air, shouting in exasperation, and instantly released his divine sense. If the distance was close enough, Xiao Hua definitely would not hesitate to release the soul stab technique, and would definitely ruthlessly teach this untactful cultivator a lesson. However, after Xiao Hua released his divine sense for a moment, a trace of strangeness appeared on his face, and he thoughtfully looked at the place where his divine sense swept past. After a moment, Xue Xue also returned to normal, rolled her eyes at Xiao Hua, and released her divine sense, also looking in that direction. When Xue Xue understood, an eager expression appeared on her face, and she said with a smile, "Husband, usually when I see you, you are happy to help others. Why are you so lazy today?" Chapter 2149. The greatest pleasure in the world has been disturbed for no reason. Who would be interested in caring about others? Xiao Hua said angrily, "Didn't you see that she's already coming this way? Looking at her, she has enough strength to fly here." Since that's the case, husband will help me to prepare. I'll go and try my skills." Shue Shue said, and without waiting for Xiaohua to answer, she flew toward the depths of the Kueha Sea. Wife, Xiaohua was a little anxious. That sea beast has strength close to the middle stage of foundation establishment, and that female cultivator is also at the early stage of foundation establishment. She can't fight it and is flying toward us. What's the use of you going? You just entered foundation establishment. Hehe, I just entered foundation establishment, but isn't there a fellow cultivator at the early stage of foundation establishment there? Shue Shue said indifferently, moreover, don't I have a virtuous wife nearby? What's there to be afraid of? A virtuous wife? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, go, just go. Your husband will be your virtuous wife, and I guarantee nothing will happen. He, I knew my husband would agree. Shue Shue said, and she sped up to fly into the distance. At the same time, beauty like a butterfly appeared in the air, and the colorful butterfly-like brilliance protected Shue Shue's body. Seeing Shue Shue take out her magic weapon, Xiaohua's heart calmed down. He clapped his hand and held the soaring dragon shears in his hand. Although there was no difference between holding it in the air and holding it in his hand, Xiaohua still felt at ease holding it in his hand. The two had just flown a few miles when they heard a rumbling explosion in front of them. They saw a short, petite female cultivator flying toward Xiaohua and Shue Shue while constantly waving hand signs behind her. A string of water balls fell into the water of the Kueha Sea. The water balls exploded, and the sound of the explosion splashed the sea water everywhere. In the midst of the splashing sea water, a pitch-black sea beast several meters in size was exposed. Several soft tentacles stretched out from the two sides of the sea beast's back, and then it moved the sea water, chasing after the female cultivator as if it was flying. At the same time, several small, ink-ball-like particles also smashed toward the female cultivator. Whenever the particles exploded, a putrid stench and pitch-black smoke mixed in the sea water rushed toward the female cultivator. The smoke actually didn't dissipate in the sea wind. The female cultivator was obviously afraid of the smoke. She used several water balls to blast the smoke away, and immediately fled far away. However, the female cultivator's flying speed wasn't fast. In fact, it was even slower than the flying speed of an ordinary cultivator. Thus, no matter how fast she flew, the sea beast could easily catch up to her. Fellow cultivators, help me. When the female cultivator saw Xiaohua and Shue Shue, who were both in the early stage of foundation establishment, fly over, she was pleasantly surprised. This gongzhi is too powerful, it should be close to the middle stage of foundation establishment. The three of us together should be able to scare it away. After we escape this calamity, I will thank you two fellow cultivators. No problem. Hearing this, Shue Shue pursed her lips and glanced at Xiaohua. With a wave of her hand, a dozen or so fireball talismans were taken out with a rumble. They really were like heavenly maidens scattering flowers on the black and white sea. Tch, Xiaohua curled his lips. Wasn't this the fireball talisman he gave Shue Shue earlier? Now she actually took it out and used it. Xiaohua's fireball talisman was so powerful. Dozens of fireballs fell on the sea beast's pitch-black back and exploded at the same time. The explosion caused the gongzhi to shake violently, and the surrounding sea water was raised high. It was obviously in great pain. With a loud and clear sound, a water sword suddenly shot out in front of the gongzhi's head. As soon as the water sword came out, the Kueha Sea immediately condensed into ice and pierced toward Shue Shue. The ice sword was so fast and so powerful that it contained a sufficient amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Xiaohua was slightly startled. He was just about to wave the soaring dragon shears, but at this moment he saw Shue Shue calmly urging the true essence in her body. The butterfly-like magic weapon suddenly flashed, and one of the butterfly-like magic weapon expanded, blocking the ice sword. The ice sword pierced the butterfly, twisting it. But in just a moment, the butterfly trembled slightly and returned to normal. The ice sword, however, lost its strength and fell into the Kueha Sea. Seeing this, Xiaohua felt relieved. Fellow Taoist, why didn't you come to help? The female cultivator whose face was somewhat pale and seemed to lack blood was the female cultivator Xiao Hua met at the auction in Haoming City. She asked very strangely. Xiao Hua originally wanted to touch his nose out of habit, but he suddenly remembered that this female cultivator might have seen his actions. He immediately stopped and said with a smile, "My wife will do it. I will hold the fort for you." The female cultivator looked at Xue Xue and glared at Xiao Hua. She raised her voice and said, "Fellow Taoist, lure Zhenjie to the side. I know Zhenjie's weakness. If you and I work together, we will be able to drive this monster away." "Okay." Hearing this, Xue Xue waved her hand and threw out more than 10 fireball talismans, while she flew horizontally. Zhenjie was in pain. He swept his weak and tyrannical divine sense and chased after Xue Xue. At the same time, the ink balls in his tentacles shot toward Xue Xue. "Fellow Taoist, be careful." The female cultivator reminded, "Zhenjie's ink balls are highly toxic. If the skin touches even a little bit, it will immediately disintegrate. If it touches the face." Hearing this, Xue Xue was shocked and hurriedly threw several fireball talismans in front of her. Unfortunately, Xue Xue's technique was not as good as Xiao Hua's. A few ink balls still dodged the fireball talismans and flew close to Xue Xue. When the ink balls exploded, the ink fog rushed toward Xue Xue. Xue Xue hurriedly flew up, and the butterflies around her rotated again. However, she flew a little too late. Moreover, the ink fog could actually seep into the butterfly orchids. Xiao Hua was already prepared. Seeing that Xue Xue had some mishap, he immediately swung his big sleeve and used the Heaven and Earth sleeve spell. A gust of wind was generated from his Taoist robe and instantly blew away the ink fog. "Ah?" The female cultivator was shocked at first, but then her face revealed an ecstatic expression. Heaven and Earth sleeve spell. Fellow Taoist is actually in the middle stage of foundation establishment? Xiao Hua turned to look at the female cultivator. At first, he was somewhat puzzled as to why this female cultivator, who was only in the early stage of foundation establishment, knew about the Heaven and Earth sleeve spell. However, he immediately understood. This female cultivator, if she isn't a disciple of Blood Red Island, then she must be a disciple near Blood Red Island. However, Xiao Hua understood that the sea region he was in was far from Blood Red Island. He was somewhat puzzled as to why a disciple of Blood Red Island would come here alone. Just as the female cultivator was in a daze, several ink balls also flew to her feet and exploded extremely quickly. The female cultivator did not have any protective magic tools. Seeing that she was about to be tainted by the ink fog, Xiao Hua was helpless. He could only wave his sleeve again and use the Heaven and Earth sleeve spell to disperse the ink fog. Chapter 2150. This was great. The female cultivator who wasn't completely sure a moment ago was even more certain that Xiao Hua had the universe concealment sleeve. Now that she knew Xiao Hua's cultivation and saw Xiao Hua's universe creator, the female cultivator's expression calmed down. Her previous panic disappeared without a trace. She clapped her hands and took out an item. She smiled at Xiao Hua, formed a water-dispelling seal, and rushed into the sea. When Xiao Hua saw the item in the female cultivator's hand, his body swayed and fell from the sky. He saw that the item in the female cultivator's hand was none other than a devil's spear tip. Damn it! Isn't this young master's specialty? How did this female cultivator steal it? Xiao Hua stabilized his body, and his face showed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He scanned with his divine sense and observed the female cultivator's actions. The female cultivator dived into the water. Only Zhenjie's diamond-shaped head had some antennae, and there were no antennae on his oval-shaped body. Instead, because he waved his antennae, his entire body moved. As he moved, circles of ripples rippled outwards. It seemed that there was also a powerful magic power within it. The female cultivator flew into the sea and raised her hand. Dozens of water balls shot out and hit Zhenjie's lower body. Obviously, these water balls were no different than tickles for Zhenjie. Zhenjie didn't even move. His body only moved, and he used his antennae to hit Xue Xue. Xue Xue saw that the ink fog was swept away by Xiaohua, and she couldn't help but feel angry. She wanted to test her strength after Foundation establishment. She had just started using her magic tool, and she hadn't used it much yet, but it was inexplicably blackened by Zhenzhe. If Xiaohua wasn't beside her, she would have been poisoned. It was fine if it was in front of others, but this was in front of her own lover. Xue Xue's face really couldn't hang on. Thus, Xue Xue took out the lightning whip without hesitation. Under the urging of magic power, the lightning whip flickered with electricity. Following Xue Xue's wave, the lightning whip whipped Zhenzhe's body. Zhenzhe's strength was close to the middle stage of Foundation establishment, so he naturally sensed it. Dozens of antennae waved one after another, and the ink balls flew out. A few of his antennae suddenly extended and wrapped around the lightning whip. Chi-la-la! The lightning whip struck the ink ball, and the ink mist that had just appeared was immediately dispersed by the lightning. At this moment, the tentacles had also wrapped around the lightning whip. Moreover, the tentacles extended along the lightning whip, attempting to snatch the lightning whip away from Xue Xue's hands. However, bolts of lightning emerged from the lightning whip and struck Zhenzhe's antennae. The tentacle felt pain and didn't dare to move. Instead, it immediately retracted. Just as the tentacles retracted, a crisp pa sound was heard as the lightning whip struck Zhenzhe's back, which was exposed above the seawater. A slightly larger electric arc appeared and entered his back. A faint blue light flickered on Zhenzhe's back before it was extinguished. Roar! With a dull roar, Zhenzhe cried out in pain. His diamond-shaped head popped out of the water. The front of his head was covered with thick tentacles that covered a deep hole that looked like a mouth. At this moment, the deep hole had opened its tentacles, and a ball of water several feet in size shot towards Xue Xue. Evil creature! Xue Xue lightly reprimanded. The lightning whip in her hand waved again, but this time, it was a slightly rotating circle. A lightning net was formed from the lightning whip and scattered towards the ball of water. With a pu sound, the ball of water was caught by the lightning net and shot forward several feet. This time, under the extremely thin lightning, it gradually shrank and finally disappeared. Pa! At this moment, Zhenzhe's head once again smashed into the seawater. Immediately after, several water swords emerged from the water and shot towards Xue Xue. Roar! The moment the water swords turned into ice spikes, Zhenzhe roared again. This time, it seemed to be in even more pain. Xiaohua, who was at the side, saw clearly that the female cultivator was hiding under the water. At this moment, she was using the devil spear to pierce through Zhenzhe's defense and deeply pierce his body. Zhenzhe's body was especially soft and slippery, but the devil spear seemed to be its nemesis. Although it was pierced very deeply, the light blue liquid that flowed out showed that Zhenzhe was injured. Rumble! Zhenzhe seemed to be angry again. A wave of divine sense rushed out of the sea and a wave of water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth gushed out from Zhenzhe's body. In an instant, it enveloped Xiaohua and the others. Within 10 feet, a bone-piercing chill was born. Kacha! Kacha! With Zhenzhe as the center, cracking sounds spread out in all directions. Immediately after, Zhenzhe nimbly turned around. It was very different from its huge body. Its tentacles swarmed out and reached towards the female cultivator. The female cultivator naturally chased after it. However, it seemed like she was far from being as nimble as Zhenzhe in the water. Moreover, within the seawater, the chill was also born. The female cultivator's body flickered as if she was trying her best to resist. Damn, it's really close to the middle stage of Foundation establishment. This young master has to make a move. Xiaohua saw layers of frost being born and pressing towards Xue Xue. The spiritual energy within the frost was very strong. It was far from what Xue Xue, an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, could compare to. Moreover, when Xue Xue waved her lightning whip, she could only break the frost on the side. The frost's tendency to spread was beyond her ability. Thus, she waved her hand and ignited the Samadhi True Fire. Like a fireball, the spiritual energy rushed towards Zhenzhe from all directions. Seeing this, Xue Xue was overjoyed. She no longer cared about the strong frost and waved her lightning whip again, attacking Genja's back. How could Xue Xue let Genja turn around? Put. The lightning whip hit Genja several times. Although Genja's defense was strong and the lightning couldn't injure it, the power of the lightning could always penetrate its body, making it suffer unspeakably. Moreover, Xiaohua's Samadhi True Fire had already completely melted Genja's frost. Genja's spiritual energy was really not worth mentioning in Xiaohua's eyes. Afterwards, Genja fought several times. Xue Xue's lightning whip was its nemesis. Moreover, Genja's extremely powerful black fog was dispersed by Xiaohua's universe sleeve several times. The female cultivator under the water also stabbed Genja several times. Genja roared several times and suddenly disappeared into the sea. Its body quickly dived down and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. The whirlpool created by Genja's dive almost brought the female cultivator under the water. "Fellow Taoist, help me!" The female cultivator's face was filled with anxiety. It seemed like she still wanted to dive down and she shouted loudly to Xue Xue. Xue Xue wanted to help her, but she also understood that she and the female cultivator were not Genja's opponents. Once they reached the bottom of the sea, they would be even weaker. How could she help her? Thus, she could only smile and say, "Fellow Taoist, why are you so persistent? Genja has already escaped. Isn't fellow Taoist life?" That's right. When the female cultivator met just now, she said that she only needed to chase Genja away. Now that Genja had escaped, what was she going to do? This concubine needs one of Genja's tentacles. Just one. The female cultivator's divine sense chased after Genja, but her eyes were looking at Xiaohua. Naturally, this idea only came to her after she saw how powerful Xiaohua was. The female cultivator hastily begged, "If this concubine obtains the tentacle, I will definitely repay you generously." Xiaohua's heart stirred. He clapped his hand and a black light flew into the sea. "Fellow Taoist, this is..." The female cultivator naturally couldn't obtain Genja's tentacle by herself. She also knew that Xue Xue didn't have this ability and could only rely on Xue Xue. However, when she saw that Xiaohua didn't move and only gave her a small and unremarkable magic tool, how could she not be worried? Xiaohua looked at the female cultivator with a smile and said, "What can fellow Taoist do you have to repay me with?" Fellow Taoist is so confident? The female cultivator was stunned and said, "That's a Genja that is close to the middle stage of foundation establishment. In the sea, it is comparable to the middle stage of foundation establishment." Ouch! Before the female cultivator could finish speaking, her eyes lit up. She sensed something with her divine sense and her face was filled with pleasant surprise. Sure enough, in a moment, that black light flashed from the sea. It was Xiaohua's black iron needle. On the black iron needle, there was a wriggling tentacle of Genja. The female cultivator looked enviously at the black iron needle in Xiaohua's hand and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She bowed and said, "Junior Qua Chiao, from Blood Red Island greets Senior. May I know which island Senior is from? This Junior is truly unfamiliar with it." "Hee, I am Xiaohua from the country of Shi's Thunder Control sect." Xiaohua put away the black iron needle and held the ice-cold tentacle of Genja in his hand. He said with a smile, "This is my dual cultivation partner, Xue Xue." Country of Shi? Thunder Control sect? Qua Chiao was stunned. However, she immediately understood and bowed again. "This concubine greets Senior Xiao and fellow Taoist Xue." "Hee, no need to be so polite." Xue Xue stepped forward and said with a smile, "This concubine and my husband came to the Sea of Shi, he to travel. We have already stayed here for a period of time and didn't see any powerful sea beasts. Fellow Taoist Qua, what is going on? You actually lured a middle-stage foundation establishment sea beast so far? I am ashamed." Qua Chiao glanced at the tentacle of Genja in Xiaohua's hand, and a trace of shame appeared on her face. She said in a low voice, "Speaking of which, this concubine is somewhat overestimating herself. Every 10 years, my Blood Red Island has a competition between disciples. This is also one of the competitions. This concubine wanted to win, so she took the risk and accepted the mission of killing Zhenji's tentacle. However, fellow Taoist Shui also saw that this Zhenji was very powerful. This concubine spent a lot of effort to find it and wanted to catch it off guard and cut off one of its tentacles. That was like trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Zhenji chased this concubine for 10 days and still didn't let this concubine go. If this concubine didn't encounter fellow Taoist Shui and Senior Xiao, this time, I am afraid that this concubine would have lost her life. So that's how it is. Xiaohua nodded. According to this Xiao's opinion, fellow Taoist Qua took out a demonic tool just now, right? This demonic tool is the nemesis of Zhenji? Qua Xiao, didn't hide it. She clapped her hands and took out a demonic spear tip that was slightly smaller than Xiaohua's spear tip. She handed it over and said with a smile, "That's right. This demonic spear tip doesn't fear transcendence energy and can't be driven by divine sense. It is the best tool to pierce through sea beasts." This concubine obtained this demonic tool a long time ago and has always been able to use it with ease. Therefore, this concubine had the idea of cutting off Zhenji's tentacle. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 2151. Xiaohua took the demonic weapon. It was very heavy, but compared to Xiaohua's demonic spear, it was clearly inferior. It didn't have the coldness and bloodiness of the tentacle. Seeing Xiaohua take the demonic spear easily, Qua Xiao was slightly stunned. She unconsciously sized Xiaohua up again. Xiaohua didn't care about Qua Xiao's gaze and returned the spear to her. He pondered in his heart, this Qua Xiao blocked the path of demonic weapons and only said that she only has one demonic weapon. How can I make her spit it out? After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua handed over Zhenji's tentacle and said with a smile, "The tentacle is here. Obviously, fellow Taoist also wants it. However, what can fellow Taoist exchange it with?" This. Qua Xiao slightly frowned. Then, with a tug of her hand, she took the storage bag from her waist and generously handed it to Xiaohua. "Senior, take a look. If there's anything you like in this storage bag, you can take it." "Hehe, you're quite generous." Xiaohua took the storage pouch with a smile and took advantage of the situation to hand over the tentacle to Qua Xiao. Qua Xiao was delighted to see that the tentacle was so easy to obtain. She was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. Seeing Xiaohua easily cut down Zhenji's tentacle, she knew that Xiaohua was definitely not someone she could defeat. What was the difference between having the storage pouch on her and having it in Xiaohua's hands? Oh, Xiaohua looked inside the storage pouch. Sure enough, there wasn't the demonic spear shaft he wanted. Thus, he slightly frowned. "Senior, you don't like anything?" Qua Xiao, somewhat embarrassedly said, "Junior doesn't have many things here. However, the remains of the sea beasts are also unique to my Guihe Sea." What's in this jade slip?" Xiaohua slightly shook his head and casually asked, "It can't be the secret technique of your blood-red island, right?" Hearing Xiaohua mention the jade slip, Qua Xiao's eyes lit up. She was worried that she couldn't mention the secret method of the bloody red island. Xiaohua's words were simply like giving her a ladder. This is some information about the language of the devil realm that Junior has collected. Speaking of the secret method of the bloody red island, Senior, where did you learn this sleeve universe? Oh, devil realm language. Xiaohua didn't mind Qua Xiao's question. His eyes lit up as he said, "Then this Xiao wants this jade slip." "No problem." Qua Xiao was the same as Xiaohua. Both of them were somewhat absent-minded. She nodded and said, "Senior can make a copy." "Senior, can you tell me where you got your heaven and earth sleeve secret technique?" And Xiaohua took out the jade slip and copied it with his divine sense while casually saying, "This Xiao obtained a jade slip in the flame forest swamp, and it contains this heaven and earth sleeve secret technique." "It really is flame forest marsh." Qua Xiao exclaimed and asked anxiously, "Then, are the other things with the jade slip still there?" At this time, Xiaohua didn't answer her question. He concentrated on copying the jade strip. Hua Qiao stood there awkwardly. Perhaps it was because they had fought sea beasts together, or perhaps it was because Hua Qiao was not as pretty as Xue Xue, but Xue Xue still liked Hua Qiao. At this moment, she stepped forward and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Hua, please wait for a moment. My husband will explain to you in detail in a while." Hua Qiao rolled her eyes and said with a smile, "Fellow cultivator Xue, don't call me fellow cultivator. Just call me Qiao." Hee, fellow cultivator's cultivation is deeper than this concubine's. This concubine has just entered foundation establishment. How can I casually address you? Xue Xue also said with a smile. It can't be. Hua Qiao's eyes widened as she said in surprise, "Big Sister Xue's magic power is deeper than Qiao's. How can you have just entered foundation establishment?" Qiao definitely won't believe it. Xue Xue was helpless and couldn't explain further. Thus, Hua Qiao casually explained to Xue Xue. Not long after, Xue Xue understood the reason. It turned out that thousands of years ago, for some reason, the island master of the blood-red island went to the flaming forest swamp of the country of Shi with the other island masters. It seemed like they were hunting some demonic beasts or searching for something. In short, a few early gold core stage cultivators went together. They thought it was an extremely simple matter, but who would have thought that these people didn't come back after going? After that, the other few islands were in a mess because of the inheritance. Many people even died. The inheritance of each island was divided into several branches, and some even died out. Sea City's Su family seemed to be a branch of one of the islands. Blood Ray Island was considered lucky because the island master at that time had a twin brother. Although his cultivation wasn't golden core, he was still in the late stage of foundation establishment. Under the consolation of this brother, Blood Ray Island didn't fall into decline. However, because the missing island master had brought along some of the Scarlet Island's secret magic books, the famous magic arts of the Scarlet Island, such as the Heaven and Earth Sleeve, were only elementary magic arts. The advanced magic arts were missing. Fellow Taoist Hua. Xue Xue shook her head with a smile. Every Thunder Palace of my Imperial Thunder sect has a library. These techniques are all stored in the library. They definitely won't be lost just because something happened to the sect master. Don't tell me your sect doesn't have such an arrangement. Hua Qiao smiled bitterly. Of course my Blood Ray Island has a library, but it's also a coincidence. Perhaps that senior was comprehending these techniques and took away the jade slips of these techniques. If the island master didn't investigate carefully, I'm afraid he wouldn't believe that such a thing happened. I don't know about the other techniques. At this moment, Xiaohua also finished copying the jade slips. He handed over the storage pouch and said with a smile, "However, I can guarantee that the Heaven and Earth Sleeve jade slips recorded in it are complete." "That's great." Hua Qiao was overjoyed. "As long as I can find this technique, it'll be a great merit." "When did I agree to return this jade slips to Blood Ray Island?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "Even if it's your Blood Ray Island's Heaven and Earth Sleeve technique, I've obtained it in Flame Forest Swamp. It has nothing to do with your Blood Ray Island." "Yes, I naturally know this." Hua Qiao smiled apologetically. "Now that the jade slips are Senior Zhao's, and it can be said that Heaven and Earth Sleeve is Senior Zhao's divine ability. Naturally, it has nothing to do with my Blood Ray Island. However, my Blood Ray Island also has Heaven and Earth Sleeve. I believe that while Senior and his disciple can inherit this divine ability, if you completely copy this technique to my Blood Ray Island, you'll definitely be greatly rewarded." Xiaohua sneered. "Your island master is a gold core cultivator. Do you think I'll go?" Hua Qiao was silent. That's right. How could Xiaohua walk right into the trap? Hua Qiao sighed and bowed. "No matter what, I was able to obtain the whereabouts of the Heaven and Earth Sleeve technique. It's also a merit to my Blood Ray Island. When I return to the island, I'll report to Island Master and ask Island Master to pay a visit to Senior at the Thunder Controlling Sect in the country of Shi. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Com to vote. Chapter 2152. Fine. Hearing this, Xiaohua felt a headache coming on. He didn't want Blood Ray Island to cause an uproar in Imperial Thunder Sect. How about this? Xiaohua glanced at Xue Xue and said, I'll believe you this time. What? Hua Qiao was stunned and couldn't believe her ears. This Xiao has always been merciful and benevolent. To be honest, this Xiao has already made a copy of this universe creator cultivation method. My thunder-controlling sect's myriad Thunder Valley already has a copy. Xiaohua smiled and said, this Xiao is also willing to exchange this jade slip for some things. But what? Hua Qiao said nervously, Senior, I'll do anything you ask of me. Xiaohua's lips curled into a lewd smile. Hua Qiao's skin turned cold and she hugged her not-so-towering chest with her hands. As long as fellow Hua promises not to take the initiative to speak of this matter and help me ask for the location of an island in the Kuai-He Sea, I will find a safe place and return the jade slip to Blood Red Island before I leave. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed slightly as he spoke the question that Hua Qiao had in mind. Of course, Hua Qiao let out a long breath and patted her chest. Junior swears that I won't speak of this matter to Island Master. I'll just say that Senior was invited by Junior to compete. But Xiaohua didn't ask what this competition meant and nodded. In addition, what island is Senior Xiao looking for? Hua Qiao asked again, can Junior know this in advance? Of course. Xiaohua nodded, I'm looking for an island called Sunset Island. Sunset Island? Hua Qiao was indeed confused. After thinking for a long time, she shook her head and said, Junior didn't know there was such an island in Kuai-He Sea. It seems that I have to return to Blood Ray Island and ask Island Master. Xiaohua wasn't surprised by Hua Qiao's words. If Hua Qiao knew where Sunset Island was, Xiaohua might kill her with one palm. Seeing that Xiaohua was taking the risk to go to Blood Ray Island, Xue Xue felt strange and whispered, Husband, you took his secret technique, why are you sending it to him? It's best to stay as far away from Blood Red Island as possible. Wife, don't worry, Xiaohua said with a smile. He's just a core formation cultivator. Her husband wasn't even afraid of old ghost Zhong from the Zhong family, so why would he be afraid of some unruly cultivators from overseas? Besides, I still have some things to ask of Hua Qiao. All right. Xue Xue naturally had some understanding of Xiaohua's cultivation, and also knew that Xiaohua would not force others for his own cultivation, so she nodded in agreement. Senior Xiao, please wait a moment. Seeing that the matter was settled, Hua Qiao was happy. She smiled apologetically and said, Junior wants to take some elixirs and adjust my breathing. All right. Xiaohua nodded. When Hua Qiao took out a pill and was about to consume it, Xiaohua smiled and said, Taoist Hua, what pill is this? May I have a look? Oh, this is my Scarlet Island spine pellet. It's refined from the inner core of a sea beast. I'm afraid it's not the same as the Shi country's medicinal pills. Hua Qiao understood Xiaohua's words. She handed the spine purline pill to Xiaohua and said, This pill is for Senior. All right. Xiaohua took it and put it in front of his nose to smell it. A slight fishy smell, accompanied by a trace of medicinal fragrance, entered his nose. Xiaohua nodded slightly. He understood that the spiritual herbs on the islands of He Sea could not compare to the Dawn Rain continent, but there were many sea beasts. Sea beasts that condensed their cores all had inner cores, which were also condensed from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Refining elixirs was even better than using spiritual herbs. However, using the inner core of a 5th-rank sea beast to refine elixirs for a foundation establishment cultivator to consume, isn't it too extravagant? Xiaohua sighed. Thinking of this, Xiaohua blushed with shame. He had obtained a lot of jade slips in Flame Forest Swamp. Later on, he obtained even more jade slips in Inkcloud Black Forest. He clearly knew that there were some things inside, but he only flipped through them to see if they were useful for his cultivation. There were many Qi refinement cultivation methods and some incomplete secret methods that he did not examine carefully. Didn't Hua Qiao also mention it? Xiao Hua had no impression of the other cultivation methods of Blood Ray Island that were together with the universe in the sleeve. However, Xiao Hua could not be blamed. This time, he left the Imperial Thunder Sect and accompanied Xue Xue to gain experience. His accumulation was really astonishing. In a short few years, not even 10 years, he still had to cultivate. Where would he have the time to comprehend the jade slips one by one? Perhaps, when the Sword Heart Energy Seed technique succeeds, I will also split a primordial spirit and focus on comprehending these jade slips. Xiao Hua slightly raised his lips. The Dream Execution Sword has been in gestation for several years. Why is there still no movement? Of course, Xiao Hua's split primordial spirit had an extremely subtle connection with his main primordial spirit. How could he not know about the budding changes? However, it had been several years now, and the sword spirit had not been born yet. This made him somewhat impatient. During this period of time, it was also fortunate that he had the soaring dragon shears. Otherwise, he would have suffered many times. After an hour, Hua Qiao finished adjusting her breathing. She took Xiao Hua and Xue Xue and flew straight to the place where the sun rose. This flight lasted several days. What made Xiao Hua blush with shame was that Hua Qiao was different from him. She did not need to take out the Sinon at all. She knew where to go and how to hide like the back of her hand. It was as if this Gui He Sea was her own backyard. On this day, it was already noon. They arrived at a messy reef. Countless jagged reefs protruded from the sea surface. Large patches of seaweed and other things swayed between the reefs. White foam also floated between the seaweed. Hua Qiao stopped in midair and said in a low voice, "Senior Xiao, Sister Xue, please wait for a moment. I have a senior brother who is training here. I will call him later." When speaking of senior brother, Hua Qiao's face was slightly unnatural. Oh! Xiao Hua's heart moved. He immediately thought of that tall cultivator who was as valiant as an ox. Xue Xue smiled like a flower and said, "If Qiao is willing, of course it's good. Sister doesn't care." "Thank you, sister." Hua Qiao clapped her hands and took out a communication talisman. She whispered a few words and shook it into the sea. The communication talisman emitted a blue light and disappeared into the water. Sure enough, in just a moment, a burst of air bubbles violently appeared. Soon after, there was a loud sound of water. From the gap between the reefs, a burly middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator squeezed out with difficulty. This cultivator's body was very large. It was actually somewhat similar to Xiao Hua's Vajra Dharma body. It was the male cultivator that Xiao Hua saw. The male cultivator floated to the sea surface and glanced at Xiao Hua and Xue Xue. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He then landed on the reef and called in a low voice, "What's the matter?" When Hua Qiao saw the male cultivator, a trace of warmth flashed in her eyes. She pointed at him and said, "This is Senior Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect. This is fellow Taoist Xue Xue." Oh, the male cultivator looked at Xiao Hua and Xue Xue and bowed. Hua Rhyming of the Blood Red Island greets Senior Xiao and fellow Taoist Xue. This Hua Rhyming is a bore? Xiao Hua was stunned. He didn't have a particularly good impression of Hua Qiao and Hua Rhyming because he previously thought that Hua Qiao wanted to join forces with Hua Rhyming to plot against him. But now, after hearing Hua Qiao's introduction, Hua Rhyming called him senior without any explanation. This was absolutely not commensurate with his middle-stage foundation establishment cultivation. However, after Xiao Hua and Xue Xue returned the greeting, Hua Rhyming said to Hua Qiao in a silly manner, "Qiao, the cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent are all scheming. It's not like you were cheated a lot in Dawn City. Why don't you pay more attention now? Fellow Taoist Xiao is obviously at the early stage of foundation establishment. Why do you want me to call you senior?" Hearing this, Xiao Hua's face burned. Wasn't it him who coincidentally obtained the tail of the Devil Spear during the auction in Dawn City? Brother Ming. This senior Xiao can't be compared to other cultivators. Hua Qiao pursed her lips and smiled. It was senior Xiao who rescued me from Genji's tentacles. Ah? You really found Genja? Kwa Rhyming was shocked. Without caring about anything else, he turned around and bowed deeply. I really have to thank Senior Xiao. Xiao is a little headstrong. I have advised her several times, but unexpectedly, she still went to find Genja. If it wasn't for Senior Xiao, I wouldn't have known. Seeing that Kwa Rhyming had put Kwa Xiao's safety first, which was completely different from Zhongling Mountain Village's Zhongyuan, Xiao Hua was delighted. He raised his hand and said, "Don't be so polite. Fellow Taoist Kwa, just call me fellow Taoist. I don't dare to call you Senior." Senior Xiao called me Senior Xiao. How would I dare to change it? Kwa Rhyming shook his head and said, "Moreover, Senior Xiao saved Xiao's life. I will definitely call you Senior." Hee, Brother Ming, look at what I have here. Kwa Xiao immediately took out Genja's tentacles as if she was presenting a treasure. You really got it. Kwa Rhyming smiled and reached out to hold Kwa Xiao's hand. He said with a smile, "The first place of this competition will definitely be yours." Hee, it's all thanks to Senior Xiao. Kwa Xiao said with a smile, "I also asked Senior Xiao to help me." Senior Xiao also agreed. When Kwa Rhyming heard this, he immediately turned around and wanted to bow. Xiao Hua had a headache. He immediately raised his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Kwa, you don't have to thank me." How could Kwa Rhyming let it go? He still wanted to bow. However, Xiao Hua's arms seemed to be cast from copper and iron. He seemed to be unable to bow down. Kwa Rhyming was slightly stunned. Just as he was about to use his strength again, he heard Kwa Xiao say, "If Senior Xiao doesn't allow you to bow, then don't bow. You bowed so many times in such a short period of time. You are making me dizzy." Kwa Rhyming was very obedient to Kwa Xiao. He immediately stopped bowing and stood up. "By the way, Brother Ming, did you get the tiger mark amber?" Kwa Xiao took back Genja's tentacles and asked with concern. Chapter 2153. Hearing Kwa Xiao's question, Kwa Rhyming was a little embarrassed. He scratched his head and said, "I don't know why, but this tiger amber is especially smart this time. I have been guarding it for dozens of days and have seen a few of them. But, before I can make a move, they immediately run away, as if they already knew I was here." Hee, Brother Ming, you made a bet with me. Kwa Xiao covered her mouth and said, "I already got this gangja. What are you going to say?" "Yes, I lost the bet." Kwa Rhyming nodded and said, "Whatever Xiao says." Kwa Xiao puffed up her cheeks and said in a fit of pique, "It's always like this. You obviously lost, but you still act like you won. Even if you win, I still have the final say. What's the point?" "Xiao." Kwa Rhyming took 2 steps forward and said in a low voice, "Senior Xiao and fellow Shui are both here. Don't let them laugh at you." Kwa Xiao slightly raised her head and avoided Kwa Rhyming. She slightly blinked at Shui, but her face towards Kwa Rhyming was still gloomy. Shui looked at Xiao Hua and secretly laughed. She knew that Kwa Xiao was throwing a tantrum. She also lowered her head and looked at the dark green sea. She was very focused, as if there was the most attractive trick there. Xiao. Seeing that Kwa Xiao did not forgive him because of his words, Kwa Rhyming smiled apologetically and said, "Whatever you say, I will definitely listen to you." "You will listen to me? This is what you said." Kwa Xiao frowned and said angrily, Yes, I will definitely listen to you." Kwa Rhyming hurriedly said, "I will accompany you back to the island. It's fine if we don't catch this tiger amber." "No way." Kwa Xiao said unhappily, "If you accompany me back, you won't be able to complete your task. Won't you be at a disadvantage in the competition?" "Then wait a moment." Kwa Rhyming was played in circles by Kwa Xiao. He hurriedly said, "I will go down and catch the tiger amber immediately." "Do you think that tiger amber is yours?" When Kwa Xiao said this, she seemed to have thought of something interesting and actually laughed. Although Kwa Xiao was not as fair and beautiful as Shui, her bright eyes were also beautiful. Kwa Rhyming's eyes were filled with tenderness. How about this? Kwa Chiao thought for a moment and said, I originally wanted to accompany Senior Xiao and wait here, but you have been waiting for dozens of days without any results. This tiger spot amber should be surrounded by several people, but my cultivation is not enough. Why don't I ask for Senior Zhao's help? We only need a small amount of tiger spot amber's inner core to refine the spine silk pill. You only need to capture one. How about we give the rest to Senior Xiao? Oh, only now did Xiao Hua understand that Kwa Chiao had been talking for so long because she wanted him to help Kwa Rhyming, but she was afraid that Kwa Rhyming wouldn't be willing, so she did this. She really put in a lot of effort. Sure enough, Kwa Rhyming was displeased the moment he heard that, and there was displeasure on his face. It was just that he had just said that he would listen to everything Chiao said, so he was too embarrassed to say anything more. He could only keep his head down and remain silent. Senior Xiao, tiger spot amber is a necessity for refining the spine silk pill. This great flag reef is also the place where tiger spot amber is most likely to appear. If you want to refine the spine silk pill, or exchange it with the islands overseas, this tiger spot amber is the best sea beast. At this moment, Kwa Chiao smiled and said to Xiao Hua, my brother Ming's cultivation might not be as good as Senior Zhao's, but he has some talent in searching for tiger spot amber. It will be much easier for him to help you. And Kwa Chiao had put in so much effort, how could Xiao Hua not help her? Moreover, he also needed sea beasts like tiger spot amber, so he agreed without hesitation. Kwa Rhyming heard Kwa Chiao call him my brother Ming, and his unhappiness had already mostly disappeared. He cupped his hands and said, Senior Xiao, please come down with me. Okay. Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, Fellow Taoist Kwa, go first. Seeing Xiao Hua easily use the water-dispelling art to enter the sea, Kwa Chiao also said to Xue Xue, Sister Xue, let's go down too. This great flag reef looks very dangerous, but the bottom of the sea is very beautiful. I followed Brother Ming here several times, and every time I was intoxicated. Is that so? Then we should go and take a look. Xue Xue thought Kwa Chiao was worried about Kwa Rhyming, so she said casually. Unexpectedly, when Xue Xue also used the water-dispelling art to enter the sea, she opened her eyes wide in surprise and looked at this world that she had never seen before. When she just entered the sea, there was still sunlight, and after the sunlight was filtered by the dark green seawater, it actually turned into several different colors, dyeing all the seawater. Some small, almost invisible things swayed in the ripples of the water, and there were also small algae and other things floating. As she went deeper, the sunlight weakened, but she saw many fishes. Some were slender, some were thick, some were pitch black, some were colorful, some were in groups, some were alone, and there was even a long sea snake swimming in the distance like a belt. This was not the main reason why Xue Xue was shocked. She saw that the many reefs on the surface of Kwai He Sea had already become huge stone pillars in the sea. These stone pillars were like continuous hills, and the stone pillars were extremely tall. When Xue Xue scanned with her divine perception, she actually could not see the bottom of the sea. On top of the pillars formed by these reefs, there was a layer of thin, fingernail-sized protrusions. These protrusions were multicolored and extremely dazzling. Although the sunlight was extremely weak, the ripples on the surface of the water were actually like rays of sunlight that shone directly on the surface. What is this? Xue Xue opened her eyes wide and looked around. Looking at the multicolored stone pillars around her, she said curiously, why is it so beautiful? Okay, Sister Xue knows. Kwa Chiao said proudly, these are corals, and they are the specialty of Kwai He Sea. You can't see them anywhere else. Moreover, the corals on this great flag reef are even more special. The other places are either red or pink, and they are all single colors. Only the corals here are multicolored. Or maybe it is because of the rainbow colors, tiger spots are the most likely to appear. It's really magnificent. Xue Xue dived all the way down, looking greedily. This was a strange sight that she had never seen before. It's even more beautiful when we go deeper. Kwa Chiao pointed with her finger and said, "There is no sunlight in the depths of Great Flag Reef, but there is no lack of light. In the abyss, there are all kinds of grotesque sea beasts and fishes. They can all glow by themselves, reflecting each other. It's even more beautiful than sunlight. Sister Shui, you don't know this, but there is a bald, flat sea beast that has rows of candles on both sides of its body. It's extremely bright." Where Shui was even more excited as she dived down. However, just as she dived down another few hundred feet, a huge force blocked them. No matter how Shui urged, she could not go any further. Chapter 2154. Sister Shui. At this time, Kwa Chiao said helplessly, "Our cultivation is only at the early stage of foundation establishment. We can only go this far by using the water-splitting art. This water-splitting art is not the 5 elements escape art. We can't go freely in the sea. If we can cultivate to the middle stage of foundation establishment, we will be able to see the beautiful scenery in the abyss." I see. Shui released her divine sense. Unfortunately, she could see Xiaohua and Kwa Riming, but she couldn't see the beautiful sea beast mentioned by Kwa Chiao. Shui was a little disappointed and looked at Xiaohua with envy. She followed Kwa Chiao to play among the corals. Xiaohua was like Shui, his eyes lit up and he was very curious. Kwa Riming didn't explain to Xiaohua that Kwa Chiao was clever, he just kept diving. Using the water-dispelling art was different from using the earth escape art. When it reached a certain level, it would immediately generate strength. Xiaohua didn't notice it at all. He followed Kwa Riming deeper into the cave. When Kwa Riming stopped, Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense and smiled. "Fellow Taoist Kwa, you don't seem to be here, right?" "Yes, the tiger mark amber is still down there." Kwa Riming pointed at the place several feet below and said, "My cultivation can only go this far. If I want to catch the tiger mark amber, I will need to use a magic tool." After saying that, Kwa Riming clapped his hand and a 1-foot-long magic tool that looked like a ship's anchor flew out of his storage pouch. It slowly sank down until it reached a pitch-black hole that was several feet in size and a few square feet in size. So you are waiting for me?" Xiaohua laughed secretly. Just as he was about to say something, his heart moved and he was about to release his divine sense. "Senior Xiao," Kwa Riming said, "don't release your divine sense. The tiger mark amber is very sensitive to divine sense and magic power. N." Xiaohua nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the pitch-black square hole. His black iron needle was released along with his Buddhist sense. After half an hour, the seawater at the entrance of the cave swayed slightly, and a square-headed, pig-like sea beast poked its head out. However, as soon as the sea beast poked its head out, it immediately shrank back, as if it was frightened. After a few times, the sea beast came out of the hole. What a strange sea beast! When the tiger spot who completely came out, Xiaohua was stunned. He saw that the tiger spot whose whole body was yellow. It really looked like a tiger spot. The square pig head was connected to a few ball-like bodies. Finally, there was a triangular tail. Under that ball-like body, there were a few baby claws. Kwa Riming's magic weapon didn't stop at the entrance of the cave. It was half a foot away from the entrance. The tiger swam out of the cave. While its body was still, its head spun a few times as if its head was separated from its body. Immediately after, the tiger leopard swayed its tail and swam towards the coral on the reef. Kwa Riming's magical artifact was guarding that direction. Seeing that the tiger leopard was close to the magical artifact, Kwa Riming was overjoyed. In these dozens of days, the tiger leopard had never been so close to the magical artifact. However, when he activated the magical artifact, a trace of magical power surged on the magical artifact. The tiger leopard's body didn't change direction at all. A water arrow like the water of heaven and earth sprayed on the magical artifact. Kwa Riming's body slightly stagnated and his true essence also stopped. The tiger leopard's body suddenly retreated and rushed into the black hole faster than the flying sword. At this moment, suddenly, a black light appeared in front of the black hole. It was the black iron needle that Xiao Hua released before. The tiger leopard couldn't dodge in time and was pierced by the black iron needle like a candied haw. Half of his body rushed into the black hole before he finally stopped. Hiss, Qua rhyming gasped. He knew that although the tiger leopard looked very clumsy, it was actually very clever. Moreover, its square head was very hard. Even his magical artifact couldn't break its head. However, Xiaohua's black iron needle pierced the tiger leopard's head. On one hand, the tiger leopard's speed was too fast. On the other hand, the black iron needle was really sharp. Seeing that the black iron needle was effective, Xiaohua dove down several feet and easily arrived at the side of the black hole. He waved his hand and the tiger leopard fell into his hand. Sure enough, the tiger leopard's skin was very hard and cold. It was far from the soft skin that he saw. "This is for you." Xiaohua handed the tiger leopard to Qua rhyming and said, "The rest is mine." "Thank you, Senior Xiao." When Qua rhyming saw that Xiaohua was able to easily dive down, he knew that Xiaohua's cultivation was deeper than his own. After Qua rhyming received the tiger leopard, he said, "Then let's do what we did just now. Junior will put the magical artifact there to lure the tiger leopard. Senior, use the magical artifact to kill it." "Okay." Xiaohua nodded and still put the black iron needle between the corals. After a while, no more tiger leopard came out. Xiaohua asked, "Fellow Taoist Qua, I have something to ask." "Senior." Qua rhyming smiled apologetically and said, "Junior has already said that the tiger leopard is very smart. Junior doesn't know where their nest is. Junior only knows that they often come out from this hole. Just now, after the tiger leopard disappeared, I'm afraid another tiger leopard will appear after an hour." "Oh, that's not what I'm asking." Xiaohua shook his head and said, "I heard from Qua Qiao that the tiger leopard's inner core is necessary to refine the ridge pellet, right?" Qua rhyming nodded and said, "Junior doesn't know the formula of the ridge pellet, but Junior knows that the ridge pellet is refined from the inner cores of several kinds of sea beasts. Although the tiger leopard's inner core is very little, without its inner core, the ridge pellet can't be refined successfully." Xiaohua nodded, but he still didn't understand. Since the tiger leopard has an inner core, it should be at least a 5th stage sea beast, right? Why is its strength so weak? 5th stage sea beast? Qua rhyming stared blankly and said curiously, "The tiger leopard isn't a 5th stage sea beast. It can barely be considered a 2nd stage sea beast." "No way." Xiaohua was stunned. How can a 2nd stage sea beast have an inner core? How can a 2nd stage sea beast not have an inner core? Qua rhyming was even more baffled. Even if it's a 1st stage sea beast, it also has an inner core, right? Otherwise, what can the islands of Maigui Sea use to refine pills? Fellow Taoist Qua, you're saying that all sea beasts have inner cores? Xiaohua patted his forehead and suddenly understood. Qua rhyming nodded. Apart from ordinary fish, shrimps, and ordinary sea beasts that don't have inner cores, all the sea beasts that we cultivators hunt have inner cores. Otherwise, why would we hunt them? I understand now. Xiaohua said with a smile. I thought that sea beasts were the same as the demonic beasts on Xiaoyu continent. Only after reaching the 5th stage can they have a demonic core and the strength of a golden core cultivator. Is that so? The demonic beasts on the continent are so strange. Qua rhyming was also a little surprised. I rarely go to the land. This time, I went to the Haoming City with my junior sister and lost a lot of spirit stones at the auction in the Haoming City, so I don't know much about the situation on the land. What's going on? Xiaohua was stunned. After Qua rhyming explained the matter, Xiaohua laughed involuntarily. Sure enough, it was not far from what he thought. It turned out that Qua Qiao was the one who took out the jade slip with the demonic language to bid. She wanted to bait him or let him take more spirit stones to vent his anger. Who would have thought that Xiaohua would suddenly stop and let Qua Qiao bid for her own jade slip? Haoming City didn't care who bid for it. Although it was her own item, she still had to give a certain percentage of the commission. Qua Qiao tried to be clever but ended up with a loss of spirit stones instead. Ha, Xiaohua laughed. but then frowned and said, "Right, why didn't you all take these inner cores to bid?" "Hee, Senior Xiao, do you think we are unwilling?" Qua Rhyming smiled and said, "Unfortunately, the elixirs of the Dawn Rain continent seem to be different from those of the overseas islands. Moreover, most of the cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent have an earth attribute physique, while most of the sea beasts in the Gui Sea have water attribute inner cores. Who would want more? Besides, the elixir recipes of the Gui Sea islands are rare, and each island treasures them like their own lives. They have never been leaked, so how could there be such elixir recipes on the Dawn Rain continent? Then, who would want the inner cores?" "I'm afraid that's not all." Xiaohua smiled as if he had thought of something. "Yes, in addition, the elixir refined from the sea beast's inner cores is very violent. Only the disciples of the overseas islands with tough meridians and solid bodies can take it. Ordinary cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent can't take it, so the elixir refined from spiritual herbs is more gentle and suitable for them." Qua Rhyming said with some jealousy, "The disciples of the overseas islands also want to take that kind of elixir. Not only is its medicinal effect good, but it also has no impurities, unlike the spine purlin elixir, which requires the use of cultivation techniques to refine its impurities. Alas, it's a pity that the elixir refined from spiritual herbs is too expensive. Each elixir costs a lot of spiritual stones. We can't afford it." "Hee." Seeing Qua Rhyming start to complain, Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. "Actually, the inner cores of the sea beasts might be different from the golden cores of us cultivators." Qua Rhyming said again, "From what this junior knows, all the sea beasts with spiritual abilities have their inner cores. They use their inner cores to absorb the essence of heaven and earth. Sometimes, on the Gui Sea, on the night of the full moon, many sea beasts with profound cultivation will release their inner cores to absorb the essence of the moon. The power of their inner cores can fill the entire sea surface. Therefore, the sea beasts of the Gui Sea are the same as the spiritual herbs on the Dawn Rain continent. The more profound their cultivation and the longer their lifespan, the more useful they are to us cultivators." Xiaohua's expression changed. He raised his index finger to signal Qua Rhyming to be quiet. "Impossible, right?" Qua Rhyming was slightly stunned. He didn't dare to release his spiritual sense, but based on what he saw, the two of them talked for less than an hour. How could the tiger-spotted amber appear? However, when he looked at the entrance of the cave with some dissatisfaction, sure enough, an even bigger square head and big ears poked out. Chapter 2155. With Xiaohua's Buddhist awareness and the black iron needles without mana fluctuations, Xiaohua and Qua Rhyming were able to capture the tiger spot amber with ease. In just half a day, they had already obtained 9 tiger spot amber. In front of Qua Rhyming's dumbfounded eyes, Xiaohua even gave him a second tiger spot amber. Xiaohua seemed to be addicted to it. He released his Buddhist sense to check if there were any more tiger mark amber coming out. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart suddenly jumped. A feeling of palpitations came from the depths of Great Flag Reef, pressing down on his heart tightly like a mountain. "Ah?" Xiaohua was shocked. This kind of warning sign was very serious. Although he didn't know what was going to happen, he knew that the most important thing right now was to leave this place. However, just as Xiaohua was about to speak, a fiery red color gradually appeared from the depths of Great Flag Reef. "Ah? Fire wave fish beast?" Qua Rhyming's eyes immediately opened wider than a ball. His face was full of surprise and ecstasy. This is the legendary sea beast. "Fellow Taoist Qua," Xiaohua said hurriedly. "This place is extremely dangerous. Quickly follow me." "Ah? Dangerous?" Qua Rhyming was stunned. He quickly scanned with his divine sense but didn't see anything abnormal. He said disapprovingly, "Senior Xiao, if we talk about cultivation, I can't catch up to you. But if we talk about experience in QC, you should listen to me." "Good boy, Spirit Min Beast, Qian Sung." As Qua Rhyming spoke, he no longer paid attention to Xiaohua. Instead, he used his divine sense to look at the dozen or so multicolored sea beasts that had spread out in all directions and were rapidly swimming away. He muttered, These are all rare beasts that I can't even see normally. As he said that, Qua Rhyming activated his magic tool. The ship anchor flashed with a blue brilliance and flew towards a spirit min beast that was approaching. Fellow Taoist Qua, this is the last time I ask you. Don't forget that you can't even see a single one of these rare sea beasts normally. Why are they all out now? Xiao Hua formed a water-dispelling seal and his body began to sway. Unexpectedly, Qua Rhyming's eyes lit up. He simply turned a deaf ear to Xiao Hua's reminder. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent and quickly flew towards the surface of the sea. Wife. Xiao Hua released his divine sense. He had long since seen Xue Xue, who was lingering around the corals, forgetting to return. He hurriedly said, Let's go. All right. When Xue Xue heard Xiao Hua's call, she immediately activated her magic power and flew towards the surface of the sea. Of course, she didn't forget to shout, Fellow Taoist Qua, quickly follow me. But Qua Chiao's body moved slightly. She still hesitated and said anxiously, Where's my brother Ming? Xiao Hua has already passed by Qua Chiao, grabbed Xue Xue and said anxiously, I feel that there might be some unusual movement in the Sea of Life. I already warned fellow Taoist Qua, but he wants to capture some rare sea beast. Qua Chiao quickly scanned with her divine perception. Indeed, she saw even more rare sea beasts surging out. Her eyes also lit up. Praise fellow Taoist. Xue Xue knew Xiao Hua's premonition. Although her body had already flown several meters with Xiao Hua, she still didn't forget to shout, Let's go. If we don't go now, it'll be too late. Oh, Qua Chiao casually responded. She waved her hand and a light purple rope flew out. It was caught by Xue Xue. At the same time Qua Chiao flew up, she hurriedly transmitted her voice, Brother Ming, let's go, roar. At this moment, a sound similar to the roar of tens of thousands of bulls rose from under everyone's feet. The entire sea water seemed to be boiling, and countless bubbles gushed out from the depths of the sea. Along with those bubbles, an extremely powerful confining force covered an area of more than 1,000 meters. Ah? Xue Xue was greatly alarmed. The magic power in her body had already begun to stagnate. Whatever water-dispelling art, whatever flying technique, they all slowed down. Rise, Xiao Hua roared. The phoenix body flew out of his body. With a phoenix cry, its fleshy wings flapped and shattered the confining force. However, this confining force seemed to be the might of heaven. Just as it was shattered by the phoenix body, it immediately gradually reappeared. And taking advantage of this opportunity, the magic power on the surface of Xiao Hua's body surged. With a burst of brilliance, he used the bright thunder escape and flew towards the horizon with extreme speed. Roar, just as Xiao Hua flew for more than 1,000 meters, the confining force suddenly disappeared again. What followed was actually an incomparably powerful suction force. A suction force that spun towards the bottom of Gueha Sea. Rumble! Another deafening sound rang out. The majestic Great Flag Reef just now was still multicolored coral rocks, but now it was like a withered branch swallowed by a flood. It was instantly destroyed, and even the suction force rapidly sank. The seawater within 1,000 meters of Gueha Sea rushed towards the bottom of the sea like a funnel. It was as if the entire seabed had leaked a large hole here. Brother Ming, Qua Chiao, screamed miserably. The hand holding the light purple rope actually loosened. Her small and delicate body instantly fell into the whirlpool. She simply didn't have time to struggle and was about to be swallowed. Do you want to die? Xiao Hua roared angrily. The phoenix Dharma body turned around and flew over. Its sharp phoenix claws instantly broke through Qua Chiao's defense and pierced into Qua Chiao's back, firmly grabbing her. Senior Xiao, quickly put me down. Qua Chiao screamed somewhat crazily. I want to find Brother Ming. I want to die together with Brother Ming. What's the point of this? Xiao Hua was somewhat speechless. At this moment, he had already brought Xue Xue to the edge of the whirlpool. The suction force was already relatively weak, and Xue Xue was able to resist it. Even if I die, I want to be together with Brother Ming. Even if I die, I want to tell him that I love him. Hua Qiao struggled with all her might, but how could she break free from the phoenix Dharma body? Her petite body was brought to Xiaohua's side. Her Taoist robe was already soaked in blood. When Xue Xue heard this, she was about to cry. She turned to Xiaohua and said, "Husband, I know you can save Hua Riming. Put me and Hua Qiao down, and I will immediately take Hua Qiao and escape from here. I don't want to see this pair of unfortunate mandarin ducks separated from each other." This. Xiaohua released his divine sense. At this moment, the entire whirlpool was already enveloped by a huge suction force. Under the might of heaven and earth, his divine sense couldn't reach far. However, he could still see Hua Riming struggling with all his might in the whirlpool, being dragged into the abyss bit by bit. After estimating for a moment, Xiaohua understood that he should be able to save Hua Riming. However, this whirlpool and the collapsed Great Flag Reef were obviously the might of heaven and earth. Which cultivator could say that they could escape unscathed under the might of heaven and earth? However, Hua Qiao's extremely desolate gaze, incomparably desperate expression, and resolute actions all hit Xiaohua's weak spot. Chapter 2156. Forget it. Xiaohua clenched his teeth and grabbed Hua Qiao. He threw her to Xue Xue and said, "Fly horizontally as soon as possible." Then he turned around and rushed into the whirlpool. But at this moment, there was another loud roar. The tremors were several times stronger than before. Countless bubbles surged out from the bottom of the sea, and countless corpses of sea beasts were tossed out by the whirlpool. In fact, Great Flag Reef was collapsing at an even faster rate. The suction force of the sea was several times stronger. Withdraw, Xiaohua dived quickly, and his spirit was released at the same time. Xiaohua, who had always been stingy and greedy, didn't forget to amass wealth even when his life was in danger. Fortunately, as the corpses of the sea beasts around Xiaohua disappeared, Xiaohua's speed didn't decrease. It even exceeded the suction force and approached Hua Riming at an extremely fast speed. Hua Riming's face was already pale. He could still use the magic power in his body and make a dying struggle. Just as Xiaohua turned around, the suction force increased greatly. He was in the center of the whirlpool, and the suction force increased greatly. His true essence was now imprisoned, and he couldn't use any magic power. He could only be helpless. He fell into the whirlpool, and his whole body was not only spinning like a top, but also being dragged by the whirlpool at an extremely fast speed. There was no need to mention Hua Riming's mood. He was extremely depressed and regretful. In his mind, besides Xiaohua's warning before he left, there was only Hua Qiao's smile. His mood was very similar to Hua Qiao's. He was extremely regretful that he didn't say anything to Hua Qiao. Just as Hua Riming felt that the spinning sky and sea were extremely dark and was about to close his eyes, a figure appeared in front of him. When he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him, when he opened his eyes again, the figure was already close to him. However, it wasn't Hua Qiao, but Xiaohua. Senior Xiao. Hua Riming was completely stunned. He was even more stunned than Hua Qiao. Unfortunately, Hua Riming could only think with his head, but he couldn't move his hands and feet. He didn't have any magic power, so he could only watch with his eyes wide open. Just at this moment, a gust of wind was born from the center of the whirlpool. It went against the torrential seawater and rushed into the air. Following this gust of wind, the range of the whirlpool suddenly increased, and the suction force also suddenly increased. Oh no! Xiaohua was shocked. The pressure on him had increased as well, and he had no choice but to release the Phoenix technique. Moreover, he was extremely worried about Xue Xue. But at that moment, the strong winds and the suction force seemed to be able to absorb his spiritual will. Xiaohua's spiritual will was unable to reach far. How could he meet Xue Xue? Forget it. Xiaohua gritted his teeth and stimulated his magic energy once more. causing his figure to flash once more as he flashed towards the center of the vortex where the suction force was the strongest. Crack! Just as Kwa Raiming's body was about to sway, the Phoenix Dharma body extended its sharp claws and grabbed Kwa Raiming's back. Oh my, this guy's physical body is a little strange. When the Phoenix celestial body's sharp claws pierced into Kwa Raiming's flesh, Xiaohua immediately felt something strange about Kwa Raiming's flesh. It was incomparably tough, and if it wasn't for the Phoenix celestial body's continuous advancement, this claw might not have succeeded. This was a situation where Kwa Raiming didn't have the slightest bit of magic energy. However, even though Xiaohua had caught Kwa Raiming, he had also fallen into a quagmire. This strong suction force had already enveloped the surroundings of the vortex, and the force was getting stronger and stronger. Xiaohua's own true essence was also condensed, and his magic energy was gradually unable to be used. Seeing his body being dragged into the vortex, his entire body also began to involuntarily spin. While Xiaohua was inwardly complaining, his mind was also rapidly turning. Xiaohua had already experienced this spinning vortex many times in the Dark Netherland, so he could be considered to have some experience. Therefore, he didn't struggle upwards, and only urged his limited magic energy to fly parallel to the direction of the vortex. After flying for a cup of tea's worth of time, although Xiaohua didn't escape from the vortex and fell down a lot, Xiaohua had already gradually flown out of the center of the vortex, and his escape was in sight. 1. A buzzing sound as if millions of flies were flying around Xiaohua's ears shook his entire head. At this time, his magic energy was also completely disordered, and he was simply unable to continue flying. Shua. In just a moment when Xiaohua relaxed his strength, the entire vortex was like a huge mouth swallowing the entire sea, the Great Flag Reef, and many of the remains of the sea beasts that Xiaohua didn't put into his space. Xiaohua and Kwa Raiming's bodies also fell down by several tens of feet. Damn it! I'm going to die! Xiaohua was greatly alarmed, and his mind became slightly clearer as he immediately urged his cultivation method, and the earth crystal Yao milk in his meridians was activated. Soon after, a rich earth-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth flooded Xiaohua's meridians, and some of it overflowed from the surface of his body. Go! Xiaohua's spirit was once again shaken. On one hand, he turned the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into flowing true essence to urge his magic energy, and on the other hand, he used all his strength to urge the bright thunder escape to rush out of the vortex. And he also didn't forget to continue putting the remains of the sea beasts in the vortex into his space. It would be a waste if he didn't take them. Inside the vortex, all kinds of noises were unceasingly heard, and it was really lively. However, the suction force and the sweeping gale were similar to the dark wind, and gradually expanded, sucking in the several hundreds of feet of seawater. Moreover, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in this area was sucked in by the gale, forming a huge funnel that directly pierced into the sky. It was as if the end of the funnel was the layers of white clouds in the sky, and those white clouds were also drawn into the vortex. The Great Flag Reef that was originally in this sea area had long disappeared. In its place was a vortex that looked like the mouth of a pitch-black beast. This vortex was very deep, and there was simply no bottom. Everything within several hundreds of feet couldn't escape this vortex, and was completely swallowed by this vortex. Xiaohua urged so much magic energy, and it was almost the same as when he was risking his life in the ink-black forest. On one hand, he skillfully corrected his body, and on the other, he urged his magic energy, and the earth-yellow brilliance around his body repeatedly flashed. And in addition, about a foot behind his upper body, the phoenix celestial body flapped its wings to resist the restrictive force, and its sharp claws even grabbed a sturdy man that looked like a diamond. G. The sound inside the vortex changed again. This time, it was as if a giant was pushing a stone door, and there was the rusty sound of the door's axle moving. Following this sound, the hurricane that stood erect in the sky suddenly slapped down, and this situation was simply a replica of the dark wind. A wave of vast and unparalleled power from the outermost part of the vortex, from the top of the vortex, suddenly began to shrink. Everything in this area, including the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, was wrapped up and suddenly restrained. Roar! Xiaohua was very anxious, and he used the dragon transformation art with all his strength. His meridians were agitated, and his true essence instantly multiplied. Moreover, for safety's sake, Xiaohua spat out another mouthful of blood, and he had no choice but to use the reverse blood-devouring art. The bright thunder escape changed direction again, and directly rushed out of the vortex. Hoo! Xiaohua's whole body flashed with brilliance, and his speed instantly increased by half, just barely surpassing the enormous power of the vortex. At the final moment when the vortex was rapidly shrinking, he rushed out of the vortex. Like a wild horse out of control, Xiaohua's speed suddenly rushed into the still surging Kuehasi. That speed had already broken through the water-dispelling art, and Xiaohua's whole body entered the seawater. That ice-cold seawater at this time made Xiaohua feel so familiar. At this time, Xiaohua's meridians were already flowing with true essence, and abundant magic power filled his whole body. Xiaohua naturally knew that using the reverse blood-devouring art would damage his cultivation. With a sigh, he let go of Qua rhyming, and the phoenix body returned to his body. He used the water-dispelling art again, and said indifferently, "Let's go up." "Yes, I will listen to Senior's instructions." At this time, Qua rhyming was extremely respectful. This vortex was formed by heaven and earth, and the might of heaven and earth was something that only spirit-severing cultivators could resist. And Xiaohua was actually able to escape from the vortex and save him. Husband. Brother Ming, without waiting for the two to fly far, divine senses had already swept over. Xue Xue and Qua Qiao shouted at the same time and rushed over from the distance. Although Xue Xue's face was filled with surprise, but it was obviously not out of her expectations. "I am injured. Take me and fly." Xiaohua unceremoniously leaned on Xue Xue's shoulder and hugged Xue Xue's small waist. Xue Xue's mouth curved into a smile, and she nodded, "Okay." Saying that, Xue Xue hugged Xiaohua's small waist and flew out of the Guihisi. When Qua rhyming saw that Qua Qiao's robe was stained with blood, he did not care about anything else, and hurriedly grabbed her hand and asked, "Qiao, your injury." If it was another day, Qua rhyming might not dare to do this, and Qua Qiao would definitely be shy, or even slightly angry. However, Qua rhyming had gone through life and death, so he did not care about anything else. Qua Qiao also slightly twitched, and then sadness came from her heart. The corner of her mouth opened, and she cried, and threw herself into Qua rhyming's arms, tears flowing down. Qiao. Qua rhyming was stunned, like a clay statue. At this time, he realized that his behavior was inappropriate, but Qua Qiao gave him an even greater impact. For a moment he was at a loss. It was still Qua Qiao. She raised her hand, took Qua rhyming's fan-like hand, and placed it on her shoulder. Qua rhyming's hand trembled, and after a moment, as if he was blessed by luck, he trembled and touched Qua Qiao's beautiful hair. However, he only touched it slightly, and immediately retracted his hand as if it was burned by fire. Then he hesitated for a moment, and firmly stroked Qua Qiao's black hair. "Qiao." Qua rhyming's voice was trembling. "Your injury, is it serious? Is it a problem? I have healing pills here. You should take it according to your feelings." Qua Qiao shook her head vigorously in Qua rhyming's arms, and her tears and snot rubbed on Qua rhyming's body. "Oh." After a moment, Qua rhyming was still not at ease and asked again, "How did you get injured? Did you hit a reef?" Qua Qiao almost wanted to stomp her feet. She did not want to leave Qua rhyming's warm embrace, as if it was incomparably safe and tranquil there. However, she felt sweet in her heart, knowing that if she did not answer, Qua rhyming's heart would not be at ease. Chapter 2157. It's nothing. When Senior Xiao saved me, he used his avatar to scratch me. Weren't you also caught? Qua Qiao opened her mouth and took a breath of air. She said with a choked voice, "Sister Xue already gave me a pill. It's just that I didn't have time to change my Taoist robe. Oh, Qua Rhyming nodded. His heart was finally at ease. He knew that Xiao Hua's phoenix avatar's sharp claws were very powerful. His heart was also slightly distressed for Qua Xiao. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue flew into the air and watched the gradually shrinking whirlpool. They still couldn't use their divine sense to probe inside. Good girl. Xiao Hua sniffed the fragrance of Xue Xue's body and said, "Why is your husband's luck so bad? Wherever I go, there will be problems." This kind of heaven and earth anomaly happened in such a vast and boundless QC. Why did I have to encounter it? If you say I encountered it, then I encountered it. I could have run away by myself. But my wife's kindness was aroused and insisted that your husband go save them. My wife, how can you be so ruthless? Aren't you afraid that your husband will be in danger? Hee hee. Xue Xue pursed her lips and said with a smile, I naturally know that you won't be in any danger. That's why I let you go. My wife, you have the ability to foresee the future. How come I never knew about it? Xiao Hua laughed and said indifferently. However, a trace of gloominess appeared on Xue Xue's face. However, she forced a smile and said, That's right. My husband can do it on a whim. How can I foresee the future? Alright, this Qua Rhyming was brought back by this young man. How will my wife reward this young man? Xiao Hua said as his nose gently rubbed against Xue Xue's snow-white neck. Alright, Xue Xue's face flushed red and said, Qua Qiao and Qua Rhyming are coming up soon. Don't let them laugh at us. TSK, if these two people continue to chatter, let's see if my husband doesn't throw them into the whirlpool together. Xiao Hua muttered in a low voice. However, just as he was about to dawdle, Qua Rhyming held Qua Qiao's hand and flew up from the QC. Qua Rhyming looked a little embarrassed, while Qua Qiao was natural and unrestrained. She did not seem to be shy at all. Junior thanks Senior Xiao for saving my life again. Qua Qiao and Qua Rhyming bowed to pay their respects. At this moment, Qua Qiao was sincerely convinced by Xiao Hua. This cultivator is truly resourceful and noble. Hee, get up. Xiao Hua also couldn't stay on Xue Xue's body. He straightened up and waved his hand. This is my wife's order. If you want to thank someone, you should thank her. Naturally, the two of them bowed to Xue Xue. Xue Xue immediately supported the two of them. She blinked her eyes and said, Since you've been through life and death, I hope that the two of you can connect with each other and cultivate together. Qua Rhyming was a little embarrassed, but Qua Qiao nodded and said seriously, I will remember Sister Xue's words. Oh, although it was my wife's orders, you still have to thank me. Xiao Hua interrupted again. Yes, as long as I have it or Brother Ming can take it out, we will definitely thank Senior Xiao. Qua Qiao said without hesitation. Great. Xiao Hua praised in his heart, the last devil spear shaft won't run away. However, since Xiao Hua knew that there was no devil spear shaft in Qua Qiao's storage pouch, he didn't say anything. He smiled and said, Since fellow Qua said so, I will remember it. When I think of something and ask you for it, don't refuse. Of course. Qua Qiao nodded and said, I still have some things left on the island. When I return to Blood Red Island, I will definitely let Senior Xiao choose. In addition, if Senior Xiao needs anything, don't hesitate to tell me. If Brother Ming and I can do it, we will definitely do our best. Oh, right, fellow Qua, your body seems to be very tough. Could it be that you have a secret technique? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he thought of something and asked. Senior, this is the secret technique of my Blood Red Island. Qua Rhyming nodded and said, I have practiced it since I was young. Secret technique of body refinement? Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he immediately connected with Qua Qiao's strength. He turned his head and said, Fellow Qua, have you practiced it before? Qua Qiao nodded without hesitation and said, This is the rule of my Blood Red Island. All disciples have to practice it when they are young. However, after they grow up, it depends on their aptitude. Most of the female disciples give up, and only 30% of the male disciples can continue to practice it. Brother Ming is one of them. Hearing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but feel happy. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "This secret technique? I probably can't see it, right?" Qua Ryming's face showed that he was in a difficult position, while Qua Qiao said naturally, "It is as Senior Xiao said. This is the secret technique of my blood-red island. Outsiders can't see it, and we have already made a blood oath." Xiaohua nodded. Qua Qiao said with a smile, "However, Senior Xiao has the complete technique of my blood-red island. If you want to exchange it with that technique, there will be no problem." Qua Ryming looked at Qua Qiao with a puzzled expression, and Qua Qiao didn't explain. "Yes, that's right." Xiaohua nodded and said with a wave of his hand, "I just suffered a little injury and need to rest for a few days. Is there a place for me to rest? Can you two fellow Taoists lead me there?" "Senior, please follow me." Qua Qiao nodded and used her divine sense to scan the Great Flag Reef, which had disappeared without a trace. She flew up and flew towards the sunset. After more than 20 days, above the boundless sea, a blood-red color was painted on the horizon. Corresponding to the blood-red color, the Sea of Union was also blood-red. Moreover, there was a particularly bright spot amidst this blood-red color. When they flew closer, they could clearly see that it was an island that was connected together. On the island, blood-red plants covered the ground, and the rocks and soil on the island were also blood-red. It was very strange. "Senior Xiao, this is my home." Qua Qiao said and pointed. However, when her hand reached for Qua Ryming's hand flashed. It was as if he was afraid of being seen by the other disciples of Blood-Red Island. Qua Qiao glared at Qua Ryming, and this guy obediently stretched out his hand, allowing Qua Qiao to grab his carrot-sized finger. Xiaohua stroked his chin and looked at the island about 100 li away. After thinking for a while, he released his divine sense and rushed towards Blood-Red Island. Oh! Qua Qiao obviously sensed Xiaohua's divine sense and was slightly stunned. Soon after, she understood what Xiaohua was thinking. Sure enough, after a while, the same divine sense swept out from Blood-Red Island, circled around Xiaohua and the others, and locked onto Xiaohua. Chapter 2158. The master of your island is about to step into the middle stage of gold core? Xiaohua said thoughtfully. Now Qua Qiao no longer doubted Xiaohua's cultivation. She also sensed the island master's cultivation and respectfully replied, "Senior Xiao, please no. The island master's name is Qua Heng. He is an early gold core stage cultivator. I'm afraid his cultivation is similar to Senior Xiao's?" Hearing Qua Qiao's probing, Xiaohua smiled and didn't reply. His cultivation was still at the early stage of foundation establishment. After flying forward for a while, an early-stage gold core cultivator led several late-stage foundation establishment cultivators to welcome them. When Xiaohua saw these cultivators, he couldn't help but be stunned. When he saw Qua Ryming, he already felt that this guy was tall like a giant ape. However, compared to these masters, Qua Ryming was simply a small ape. The gold core cultivator in front of him was more than 10 feet tall. Moreover, he had big shoulders and a round waist. His body was incomparably sturdy. This was the appearance of Xiaohua's mighty Vajra Dharma body. And Qua Ryming was almost 2 heads shorter than this gold core cultivator. Looking at the late-stage foundation establishment cultivators near the gold core cultivator, they were also sturdy. However, they were still 1 size smaller than Qua Heng. Of course, they were still 1 size bigger than Qua Ryming. Damn it! Xiaohua was immediately overjoyed. The disciples of Blood-Red Island don't need to compete at all. They just need to stand there and compare their height to see who is stronger. Qua Heng's divine sense swept over Xiaohua and his brows slightly wrinkled. He saw a cultivator's divine sense rashly sweep in and immediately checked. Only then did he realize that there was a cultivator 100 li away accompanied by Blood-Red Island's disciples. He understood that this should be a gold core cultivator visiting Blood-Red Island, so he brought the main disciples of Blood-Red Island to welcome him. However, Kua Heng unexpectedly discovered that Xiaohua's cultivation was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. How could he not frown? It wasn't that he didn't know that Dawn Rain Continent had a mysterious technique to conceal one's cultivation, but it couldn't directly conceal one's cultivation from gold core to foundation establishment, right? He could believe it if it was from nascent soul or divine clone to foundation establishment, but he himself was a gold core cultivator. Of course, he knew how difficult it was. I, disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Xiaohua, greets Island Master Kua Heng. Xiaohua stepped forward and saluted. He didn't use the identity of a junior. Xue Xue smiled and bowed. Junior Xue Xue of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Senior Kua. Hehe, so it's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. No disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect has ever visited my blood-red island. Your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Kua Heng no longer hesitated in his heart. He hurriedly stepped forward to return the greeting and said with a smile, Hehe, Island Master, you're too courteous. Xiaohua smiled and said, I accompanied Junior Sister to the QC to gain experience. Not only did Junior Sister successfully reach foundation establishment overseas, she even encountered 2 extremely outstanding disciples from your island. This Xiao is very happy. I heard from your island's disciple that Blood Ray Island is holding a competition that is held once every 10 years. This Xiao feels that it is fate, so I came to nag you. How presumptuous! Haha, congratulations, fellow Taoist Xue. Kua Heng was a gold core cultivator. He had already seen that Xue Xue's realm had just stabilized. He also heard that Xiaohua didn't hide anything and even praised his disciple. He was happy in his heart. He clapped his hands and took out a jade bottle. He handed it over and said with a smile, This is my Blood Red Island's Foundation Establishment medicinal pill. It can't be compared to the Imperial Thunder Sects, but it is also a little bit of my appreciation. Xue Xue generously received it and Thank you for the medicine, Senior. This junior has always been curious about the spiritual medicines of the overseas islands. Senior has satisfied this junior's wish. Hehe, no need to thank me, no need to thank me. Kua Heng waved his hand and introduced several people around him to Xiaohua. Xiaohua also didn't neglect and cupped his hands to return the greeting. These late-stage foundation establishment cultivators didn't understand as well as Kua Heng. Although they also bowed, they all addressed each other as equals. Xiaohua didn't care. After all, he really was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. When Kua Heng saw this, he didn't reprimand them. He only smiled and watched. After Xiaohua finished greeting, Kua Riming and Kua Qiao came forward to report. Hearing that Kua Qiao actually asked Xiaohua to be her helper, Kua Heng smiled. You little girl, if fellow Taoist Xiao is your helper, other people still want to compete with you like this? Immediately after, he pondered for a moment and said with a smile, Since fellow Taoist Xiao wants to see the competition of my Blood Red Island and is still so enthusiastic, I can't not help but fulfill his wish. Moreover, now that we've reached the final stage of the competition, we'll simply hold the trial of the island tomorrow. All disciples will participate. Island Lord. Kua Qiao said in panic, Senior Xiao only has profound magic power. His physical body isn't necessarily tough. For him to participate in the entire trial of the island, I'm afraid it's not suitable, right? Kua Riming seemed to have thought of something and said, Qiao, Senior Xiao should be fine. Seeing Kua Riming's abnormal correction, Kua Qiao was also slightly surprised. Hehe, fellow Taoist Xiao. Kua Heng said with a smile. Fellow Taoist must also know that my Blood Red Island's foundation is body refining. In this trial of the island, there are many areas that test the achievements of body refining. Other areas also test magic power. Yes, because this grand event is held once every 10 years by my Blood Red Island, the fellow Taoists of the nearby islands also like to participate. Therefore, the ancestors allowed the disciples of Blood Red Island to invite helpers. On one hand, it increases the fun, and on the other hand, it also strengthens the cooperation with other islands. Of course, if fellow Taoist Xiao participates, there's no need to talk about the magic power segment. Who can compete with you? However, if it's just magic power, fellow Taoist Xiao also feels that it's meaningless, right? Do you have to participate in all the trials? Including the body refining technique? Looking at Kwa Hang's smile and the eager faces of the few late-stage foundation establishment cultivators, Xiao Hua said with a smile, "All right. I also happen to know some body refining techniques. I can also compare notes with the fellow Taoists of Blood Red Island." Imperial Thunder's sect also has body refining techniques? Kwa Hang was somewhat stunned. "I've never heard of it." "Hee, my Imperial Thunder sect naturally also has body refining techniques. It's just that it's not particularly famous." Xiao Huan naturally couldn't damage the reputation of Imperial Thunder sect, so he replied with a smile. "All right, fellow Taoist Xiao, please." Kwa Hang swung his Taoist robe. "Fellow Taoist Kwa, please go first." Xiao Hua said modestly. Immediately, several people flew towards Blood Red Island. This Blood Red Island was different from Awakening Silicon Island. There was no distinction between the main island and the auxiliary island. There was only a group of islands scattered together. These islands looked like one big island from afar, but when one looked closer, there were many cliffs, canyons, and accumulated seawater that separated these islands. Of course, the defense of Blood Red Island was even stronger than that of Awakening Silicon Island. There were many places that actually had magic power confining arrays. Everyone had no choice but to land and walk in step by step. In the evening, Kwa Hang held a banquet to entertain Xiao Hua and Xue Xue. Of course, apart from these two Imperial Thunder sect disciples, there were also some disciples from the nearby islands of Blood Red Island. However, most of these disciples were Qi refining realm cultivators, and very few of them were Foundation establishment realm cultivators. During the banquet, Kwa Hang was even more polite to Xiao Hua, and there was even a bit of respect in his tone. Xiao Hua understood that Kwa Qiao and Kwa Rhyming must have told Kwa Hang about the matter of them being rescued. However, since Kwa Hang didn't mention it, Xiao Hua didn't take it to heart. His road of experience was a road of sowing seeds, a road of doing good deeds, a road of fame, and a road of soaring cultivation. He could be considered to have regarded false reputation as a trivial matter. In addition, during the banquet, Xiao Hua could be considered to have seen all of Blood Red Island's Foundation establishment realm and Peak Qi refining realm disciples. Contrary to his expectations, there wasn't a single well-built female cultivator. All of the female disciples of Blood Red Island were as petite as Kwa Qiao, looking thin and weak. This made Xiao Hua have no choice but to start thinking about the good deeds his Phoenix celestial body and Fairy Hong Xia's Ice Phoenix celestial body had done after drinking a few mouthfuls of spiritual wine. Alas, drinking more spiritual wine is indeed not a good thing. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue came to the resting place arranged by Blood Red Island and couldn't help but think. The resting place of the disciples of the overseas islands was somewhat different from that of the Dawn Rain continent. Most of them built their cave dwellings inside the stone walls, and all of them were underground. There were very few pavilions and palaces. My wife. Seeing this exquisite cave dwelling with bright red decorations, Xiao Hua became restless and said in a low voice, "Finally, it's late at night again. One night is worth several thousand spirit stones. Why don't we rest early?" Xue Xue was somewhat shy. She looked around and shook her head again. "My husband, this is obviously the place where Blood Red Island entertains guests. I don't know how many people have rested here. Wouldn't it be better if we just adjust our breathing, nourish our true origin?" "Damn it, that's right." Xiao Hua suddenly realized and hurriedly said with an apologetic smile, "Your husband was wrong." Before he could explain further, a communication talisman flew in from outside the cave dwelling. Xiao Hua pinched the communication talisman and a smile appeared on his face. He said, "My wife, go inside and adjust your breathing. Your husband has good news." Xue Xue blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "Could it be that the female disciple of Blood Red Island has taken a fancy to my husband? Why are you so impatient?" Xiao Hua said helplessly, "Of course not. It's Kwa Qiao and Kwa Rhyming who came. I'm afraid they have good things for your husband. Tsk, looking at Xiao Hua's greedy appearance, Shue shook her head helplessly. Don't you have enough good things? Hee, my wife knows that there is no such thing as the most, only more. Your husband likes to have more, the more the better. Not long after, Kwa Rhyming and Kwa Qiao arrived together. The moment they met, Kwa Qiao took out a few storage bags and said respectfully, Senior Xiao, our lives were saved by Senior. Moreover, the tentacles of Gongzhe and the 2 tiger spots were also given to us by Senior. Junior discussed with Brother Ming, and these storage bags were hidden by the 2 of us. Also, Junior used the opportunity of the banquet to make some transactions with senior brothers and senior sisters, exchanging for some rare items. These are all for Senior. Senior, please accept them as a token of my appreciation. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 2159. Kwa Qiao originally thought that Xiao Hua would refuse. Who knew that Xiao Hua would take it without hesitation and scan it with his divine sense? Nonsense, didn't he come to Blood Red Island just to get Kwa Qiao storage pouch? In order to gather all the demonic tools, Xiao Hua almost lost his life. Senior Xiao is really frank. Kwa Qiao didn't know what Xiao Hua was thinking and secretly praised him in her heart. Sure enough, one of the storage pouches contained many demonic tools. One of them was the demonic spear shaft that Xiao Hua wanted. The cracks and broken parts were very similar to the ones in the space. Moreover, the small demonic hammer that Kwa Qiao used before was also among them. It seemed that Kwa Qiao really took out all the things. What is this? Xiao Hua naturally couldn't show his attention and looked at the other storage pouch. The storage pouch was full of miscellaneous items. One of them was an ox head token. It was also mottled with rust and was very similar to the tiger head token in the space. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua took out the token and asked, Qiao, what is this token? I also don't know. Seeing Xiao Hua directly call her Qiao, Kwa Qiao was very happy. She glanced at Kwa Rhyming and said, This thing was picked up by Martial Uncle in the early years when I was doing a foundation establishment trial on the Sea of Kuei. There were 2 of them. One seemed to be a pig's head. I really don't remember, so Martial Uncle casually gave me this ox head token. Which Martial Uncle? Xiao Hua said with a smile. If possible, can you also give his token to me? Oh, it's Martial Uncle Kwa Yu. Kwa Qiao answered without hesitation, but she was a bit embarrassed. I will ask Martial Uncle Kwa, but that thing is many years old. I don't know if Martial Uncle still has it. Moreover, who knows if he wants to exchange it with Senior Xiao? Xiao Hua said with a smile, You can go and ask, see what conditions he has. But Kwa Qiao readily agreed and pointed her finger. Senior Xiao, the things in this storage bag are all strange things that Brother Ming and I obtained in the Qianhe Sea. We don't know their uses. Even if you ask me, I don't know. But as expected, it's really strange. There's actually a small finger bone here. Xiao Hua smiled and put down the storage pouch. Then he looked at the other storage pouches. They were filled with sea beasts' inner cores, bones, and other things. There were even some spirit herbs from the sea. Thus, Xiao Hua pointed at the storage pouch that contained devil tools and asked, Devil tools are extremely rare in the Dawn Rain continent. Why do you have so many of them on Bloodshine Island? I'll teach Senior Xiao well. Kwa Qiao laughed and said, Seniors all cultivate Dharma spells, and this demonic artifact is extremely heavy. Without a body-tempering cultivation technique, who would use it? My Blood Ray Island uses the body-refining technique as its foundation. Naturally, we need a lot of demonic artifacts. Many cultivators who obtained demonic artifacts would bring them to the Sea City to trade with my Blood Ray Island. Looking at the storage pouch, Kwa Qiao was somewhat reluctant to part with it and said, Since young, I've been fond of refining tools. I've dabbled in demonic artifacts. Among them, there's a mysterious demonic artifact. In my opinion, it should be the famous weapon in the demon realm, Qiu Inlu. However, I only have a small part of it, so I can't make a complete judgment. Then, a trace of regret appeared on her face. When I went to Haoming City this time, I encountered another spear end. Unfortunately, it was snatched by another cultivator. It's really hateful. Oh? Qiu Inlu? Xiao Hua was obviously stunned. This name was definitely unfamiliar to him before he came to the Qin He Si. But just now, when heavenly demon sex Zhang Qingxiao wanted to escape from the 10,000 demon realms empress, she made up a lie. Wasn't it to find this Qiu Inlu? Could it be that it was this item? Is this it? There were many demonic artifacts in the storage pouch. However, only the spear shaft was left with a damaged section. Yes, Senior Zhao's eyes are indeed as sharp as torches. Hua Qiao praised. Xiao Hua originally wanted to take another demonic artifact first, and then pretend to take this damaged one as well. It could be said that he couldn't refuse but reluctantly took it. Since Hua Qiao sincerely gave it to him, Xiao Hua didn't pretend and smiled. Since Qiao is so sincere, I'll accept it. Following which, Xiao Hua took some of the spiritual herbs from the sea as well as the storage pouch that was filled with strange things. He then passed the remaining items to Hua Qiao. Senior. Hua Riming was a little anxious and said, "What you took are all useless things. These are the ones that are really useful." Xiao Hua pursed his lips and smiled. With a profound expression, he looked at the two with bright eyes. Qiao and Qiao's brother Ming. Actually, what I take or don't take, isn't it your goodwill? I didn't save the two of you for your things. So what's the difference between taking more and taking less? Of course, I saw that Xiao had deep feelings for her brother Ming. Even if she didn't want her own life, she would still die with her brother Ming. This kind of deep affection, even the heavens and earth would be convinced. Why can't I take action? Although these things aren't of much use to me, I hope that the two of you can peacefully dual cultivate in the future and reach the gold core realm. Senior. Hua Riming's eyes were filled with tears. Hua Qiao was grateful. They really didn't expect the person in front of them to be so noble. Senior, please wait a moment. I'll go find Martial Uncle. I'll definitely find the things that Senior wants. Hua Qiao left without saying anything. Hee, Qiao, don't be anxious. Xiao Hua stopped her and said, "It's already late. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'll also stay here for a while." Okay. Hua Qiao was very obedient and asked again, "Other than that thing, what else is Senior Xiao looking for in Hua He Si? Junior wants to see what effect it has?" So it's like that. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "If there are any special spirit herbs in Hua He Si, it doesn't matter what kind of spirit herb it is. As long as it's a seedling or even a seed, help me find it." Okay, Junior understands. Hua Qiao thought that Xiao Hua was disrespectful and immediately patted her chest. "Remember, I don't want anything that's perennial. I only want seeds or even seedlings." Xiao Hua didn't forget to remind them. Yes, Hua Riming and Hua Qiao took the storage pouch and rushed out excitedly. I am just so noble. There's really no other way." Xiao Hua naturally knew what the two of them were thinking. He loosened his shoulders and said helplessly, "That's right, 1,000-year-old spirit herb is really useless to Xiao Hua." Chapter 2160. Although the inner cores in Hua Qiao's storage pouch were not bad, they couldn't be compared to the sea beasts Xiao Hua caught in the whirlpool. Xiao Hua didn't care about spirit stones, so what could they give him? Perhaps only those strange and unknown things in the Kuei He Si would be able to do so. Xiao Hua threw the storage pouch into the space and placed the finger bone near the white bone in the space. Sure enough, they were one and had a faint lightning connection. Then he looked at the tiger head token and the ox head token. They were similar, but they didn't have any spiritual energy fluctuations. Who knew if they were really related? As for the demonic spear shaft, Xiao Hua was most concerned about, it was real. When the fragments of the demonic spear were put together, it was really a complete demonic spear. Is this the dragon silver armor? It's actually a famous weapon in the demon world? I can't see anything strange about it. Xiao Hua pinched his chin and thought in confusion, perhaps I can see its uniqueness after I repair it. Actually, Xiao Hua wanted to ask Hua Qiao about the refining method or her experience. However, since Hua Qiao didn't put the jade slip in the storage pouch, the refining method should be a secret of Blood Red Island. He didn't need to make things difficult for her. Moreover, if Xiao Hua asked, wouldn't his noble image be destroyed? Forget it. I know the refining method of the 5 elements, and I also have the demonic slip from the demon world. With Qiao Er's annotations, how can it be worse than Blood Red Island? Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out the jade slip that he had been referring to for the past few days. Early in the morning, when the sun rose, the clear light swept across Blood Red Island and dyed it red. Outside the cave where Xiao Hua and Xue Xue were resting, there were already Blood Red Island disciples waiting for them. Xiao Hua opened his eyes and scanned with his divine sense. Naturally, he couldn't let them wait for too long, so he walked out of the cave with Xue Xue. Senior Xiao. The disciple standing in wait was a qi refining cultivator. He said respectfully, my Blood Ray Island's island test will begin in an hour. All the martial uncles and senior brothers are preparing for it, so the island master had to ask this junior to invite senior over for the test. Please forgive us, senior. No problem. Xiao Hua suddenly understood and raised his hand. Senior Xiao, please. The attendant disciple respectfully activated the yellow talisman and led the way in front of him, flying directly to the location of the blood-colored beach that Xiao Hua had just passed when he entered the island yesterday. At this time, a lot of disciples had already gathered on the beach. Many of them were from the banquet last night. More than 10 Middle Foundation establishment stage disciples came over to chat with Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua also responded with a smile. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I heard that you want to exchange some things with I? Just as Xiao Hua was responding, a slightly cold voice sounded. Xiao Hua turned his head and saw a slightly tall female cultivator with slightly dark skin and faint wrinkles at the corner of her eyes. Moreover, her hair was also somewhat white as she landed behind him. Fellow Taoist? What do you want in exchange for I? Xiao Hua thought for a moment. He seemed to have seen this female cultivator last night. However, she was very far away, so he only swept his eyes over her. The female cultivator was slightly taken aback. Weren't you the one who sent Xiao to look for me last night? Oh, so Kuai Yu is fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua immediately realized. Last night, he mistook Kuai Yu for a male cultivator, and Hua Qiao didn't explain. What? Is it not me, but someone else? Kuai Yu said unhappily. Xiao didn't make it clear yesterday. Xiao Hua hurriedly cupped his hands and said, this Xiao apologizes here. Kuai Yu's face was slightly happy and she nodded. This old one hasn't seen that token for a long time. I originally wanted to look for it again in a few days, but Xiao sincerely requested, so this old one took a long time to find it. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua was very happy and said, if fellow Taoist needs anything, you can tell this Xiao. If this Xiao can satisfy fellow Taoist, I will try my best to satisfy you. No need. Kuai Yu waved her hand and said, you saved Qiao, my Blood Red Island is indebted to you. How can this old one ask you for something? Really? Thank you, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Kuai Yu shook her head and said with a smile, this old one didn't agree to give it to you. This old one only said that you don't need to exchange it. Xiao Hua was a bit embarrassed and said with a smile, fellow Taoist, what do you mean? Kuai Yu pointed to the distance and said, there is a departure realm heaven in the Ring Island trial. When you go there, the disciples of Blood Red Island must defeat one person to pass, and the person who is defeated will be eliminated. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this old one will wait for fellow Taoist's arrival inside. If you win, this old one will give the token to fellow Taoist. Departure realm heaven? Xiao Hua muttered and said, all right, this Xiao accepts fellow Taoist Kua's challenge. But what if fellow Taoist Xiao loses? Kuai Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiao Hua with interest. Fellow Taoist Kuai, are you that confident? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Kuai seems to only be at the late stage of foundation establishment, right? Only at the late stage of foundation establishment? Kuai Yu covered her mouth and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed a disciple of a large sect of thunder-controlling sect. Fellow Taoist Xiao seems to only be at the early stage of foundation establishment, right? Haha, that's right, this Xiao was wrong. Xiao Hua laughed and looked at Kuai Yu's hair. He patted his hand and took out a spiritual grass, saying with a smile, if this Xiao loses, this face-retaining grass will be fellow Taoists. Face-retaining grass. When Kuai Yu heard this, she was overjoyed and almost stuttered. Is this really the face-retaining grass? Fellow Taoist, do you think my thunder-controlling sect's disciple would lie? Xiao Hua patted his hand and put the face-retaining grass back into his storage pouch. At this moment, Kuai Yu's heart was filled with regret. She really didn't expect that Xiao Hua would have something that all female cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent yearned for even in their dreams. Although she already had some gray hair, after taking the face-retaining grass, not only would her appearance not change, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes would also disappear and her gray hair would also become dark. AI, this Xiao Hua is so young, yet he can be welcomed by the island master. How could he be a young cultivator? If he has the face-retaining grass, it wouldn't be surprising. Kuai Yu sighed inwardly. Her previous frosty elegance also disappeared. At this moment, Kuai Heng's figure flashed in midair. He held a dark green ocean pearl in his hand and said in a clear voice, Disciples of the Blood Red Island, are you ready? Reporting to the island master, we are ready. The disciples of the Blood Red Island sweated in unison. Good. Kuai Heng said with a smile, Today is the last day of the 10-year tournament. The previous results have already been recorded in a jade slip by the elders. After the results come out today, the top 10 will be decided. These 10 disciples will not only obtain suitable magic tools, but also get a glimpse of the secret books of my Blood Red Island. Their cultivation will definitely rise to another level. As he said this, Kuai Heng's body overflowed with brilliance. A water blue color emerged from his hand like a fountain and poured into the ocean pearl. The ocean pearl immediately let out a wung-wung sound and trembled as it flew into the air. Swish, swish, swish. A series of wind whistled and the water-type heaven and earth spiritual chi in the air was sucked into the ocean pearl. It gave rise to gusts of wind. After absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual chi for half an incense stick's time, the ocean pearl grew to half a chi in size. The dark blue color inside became even deeper. When Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over it, he felt as if he was about to be sucked in. Just when Xiao Hua was surprised and guessing the effects of the ocean pearl, he saw Kuai Heng stretch out his hand and grab the ocean pearl. Then, he spread his wings and used his hand to smash the ocean pearl onto the beach of the Blood Red Island. With a loud, pung sound, the ocean pearl smashed onto the beach. Not only did it splash up a lot of sand, but the ground under everyone's feet also shook. The sand that splashed up didn't fall down. Instead, it spread along the ocean pearl's spiritual chi and rapidly fluctuated. The ground under everyone's feet also shook more and more. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that all the disciples of the Blood Red Island were eager to give it a try. They were all staring at a place about 10 zhang in front of them. A few earth-shattering roars were heard. Plumes of smoke and dust rose from the sea of sand. A blood-red bridge, over 100 feet wide, arched out from the smoke and dust. It gradually crept forward like a spirit snake. The rainbow bridge was either winding, tall, or deep into the island. Xiao Hua's divine sense chased after the rainbow bridge and shockingly discovered that this rainbow bridge circled around the entire Blood Red Island. Oh, so this is the island trial by fire. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Above the rainbow bridge, there were more than 10 places where the spiritual chi was obscure. His divine sense couldn't penetrate them. He was afraid that they were some checkpoints of the trial. The departure heaven that Kuai Yu mentioned earlier was probably one of them. Disciples. Tomorrow morning will be the limit. When the first ray of sunlight rises, the Rainbow Bridge will be closed. My blood-red island's once-in-a-decade competition is about to end. The first disciple to reach the end of the Rainbow Bridge will be the first in this island trial by fire. Kwa Heng raised his voice and said. After Kwa Heng finished speaking, he cast a spell on the transparent enchantment formed by the sea pearl. The enchantment melted like snow and flowed to the ground, connecting the beach where everyone was to the Rainbow Bridge. Several Chi refinement disciples had long been impatient. As soon as the restriction opened, they immediately activated their flying talismans and flew toward the Rainbow Bridge like arrows leaving the bow. Husband, you go. I won't participate. Shue Shue said with a smile, I will wait for you at the end. Good. Xiao Hua nodded. He clapped his hand and took out a jade box. He said with a smile, Wife, you don't have to be idle. Take one of these beauty retaining grass. Your husband still doesn't know how to refine the beauty retaining pill. Wife, please bear with it for now. But Shue Shue's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when she saw Xiao Hua take out the beauty retaining grass. Now that Xiao Hua gave it to her, she wasn't surprised. She reached out to take it and flew out of the beach with a smile. Fellow Taoist Xiao will go first. If there's a chance, we'd like to see the means of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. After waiting for the Qi refinement disciples and early Foundation establishment disciples to fly away, a group of Middle Foundation establishment and Late Foundation establishment cultivators looked at Xiao Hua with a smile and said, To be continued. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.